Yeah. Okay. This meeting of the Greenwich Township Land Use Board is called to order. Frank.
This is the regular meeting of the Land Use Board of the Township of Greenwich. Adequate notice of this meeting has been given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act in that a notice was published in the Star Ledger and Express Times newspaper. Notice was posted on the municipal bulletin board in the Township Administration Building in Greenwich Township, New Jersey, and notice was filed with the Township Clerk. Paul Beam?
Here.
Joseph Chichella?
Here.
Frank Marchetta?
Here.
Ray Buckwalter?
Absent.
Bruce Williams?
Here.
Kathy Cullen?
Here.
Don Marie Condas?
Absent. Yeah.
You do a motion at the end.
Mark Scuderi?
Here.
Gary Hill?
Here.
Joseph Fiamma?
Here.
Jeremy Blunt?
Absent.
Bill Cognac?
Here.
Pam Peslis?
I'd like the motion to excuse Ray Buckwalter, Jeremy Blunt,
Don Marie
and
Condas.
Don Marie Condas, who've all contacted me with good reasons. The second? Scuderi? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Okay. All rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm sure that you don't fall.
I know, now I don't have
Okay, first order of business tonight, with this application, is the initial completeness review. Oh, wait a minute, sorry. Minutes, March 14th. Or
April 11th.
April 11th. April 11th. Could you all review the minutes? Do you have any questions about the minutes? If there are no questions, I'd like a motion to adopt the minutes as written. Gary Hill, Mark Scuderi. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions?
Yeah.
So we have Kathy Cohen, Frank
Pam.
Marchetta, Pam, and Joe. You didn't? You were here, okay. All right. Yeah. Are you good?
Yep.
Okay. So then the first order of business is the initial completeness review. You should have received Mr. Finelli's review letter. He recommends, I believe, there are 8 waivers needed, of which Mr. Finelli takes no issue. Is that correct?
Did you call the case?
No, because we're not really, we can't hear it until we have...
Right, just call it.
All right. All right. Greenwich Dumont Urban Renewal Associates LLC, proposed Willows at Greenwich. Application number 2019-01, Block 26, Lot 2, Greenwich Street, County Road 638, and Dumont Road. First order of business is not preliminary site plan, but completeness. Initial completeness.
That is correct.
So, am I accurate in that you have no issues with granting the waivers?
Yes, you are. My report dated June 11th kind of outlines each one, gives our reasoning, so yes, that would be correct.
Does anyone have any questions about the waivers requested, or any issues with granting those waivers? Can we do them in bulk?
Sure.
Okay. Now I'd like a motion to grant waivers on, I guess we gotta give the numbers here, right?
Yep. It's going to be per the recommendation of...
Per the recommendation, Mike Finelli, I'm looking for the right piece of paper. Technical.
Mike, send down your complete...
Here it is, I got it. Okay.
Dated...
June 11th.
Per Mr. Finelli's, review letter dated June 11th, 2019, we need a motion to grant waivers to checklist items 31, 42, 46, 51, 64, 77, 78, and 82, and this is for completeness only. Can I have
For
a motion?
preliminary site
For,
plan.
yes, completeness for preliminary site plan. Can I have a motion? To grant those waivers. Joseph? And and Frank Marqueta. Okay. Now, oh, more roll call on that? Yeah. Roll call vote, please.
Paul Beam?
Yes.
Joseph Tucchello?
Yes.
Frank Marchetta? Bruce Williams?
Yes.
Kathy Coleman? Mark Scuderi? Gary Hill?
Yes.
Joseph Fiamma?
Yes.
Bill Kenyon.
Okay, at this time, I guess we can ask the applicants to step forward, and do we need swearing in? Yes. Yep.
Good evening, everybody. Look, I'm right up in front of you. I'm Kate Coffey from Dave Pitney. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, Greenwich Dumont Urban Renewal Associates, LLC. Thank you for deeming us complete. We're here tonight for preliminary site plan application only. If approved, we'll be back before the board for final site plan approval at a later date. Before I get going, do you want to swear everybody now?
Yep.
Okay.
So, all witnesses, or anyone who thinks they're going to be a witness, please come forward, stand up, including the board experts. You can remain seated.
This is the three of you guys.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. You want to be sworn, John? Okay. All right.
Start with Mr. Long, go this way, identify yourself for the record, and spell your last name.
Jeffrey Long, with Geoffrey,
And your relationship to the applicant?
the applicant.
You're the applicant's project manager?
Yes, development principal.
Development principal and project manager, how's that?
There you go.
Development principal and project manager.
Brett Skapinetz, last name is S-K-A-P-I-N-E-T-Z, with Dynamic Engineering Consultants. I'm the site engineer.
Okay, and you're a PE, correct?
Yes, I am, and also I'm a professional planner, and I will be possibly providing professional planning testimony.
Okay, so you're the applicant's engineering expert and planning expert.
Correct.
Craig Haragoy, P-E-R-E-G-O-Y, Dynamic Traffic, traffic engineer.
Okay, you're also a PE, correct? You're the applicant's, my spelling's not that great.
How do you spell it
What was the
again?
spelling again?
P-E-R-E-G-O-Y. And to the extent anyone needs spellings, I can always provide them afterwards.
Applicant's traffic expert.
First name?
Oh, Craig.
Thank you.
C-R-A-I-G.
Jacqueline Camp, C-A-M-P, I'm architect with WRT.
And you're the applicant's architectural expert. Are you also an AIA?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Finelli, identify yourself for the record, please.
Michael Finelli, Greenwich Township Board Engineer.
Elizabeth McManus, Greenwich Township Board Planner.
Okay, can everyone raise their right hand? And do all of you swear the testimony you're going to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, to help you God?
I do.
I do.
I did.
Okay?
Okay.
Now, let's go over the notice. Did you have a chance to look at the affidavit?
Yes.
Notice in order?
Yes.
And I read the content of the notice, and in my opinion, the content is in order and the process is in order, correct?
Yes.
So the board has jurisdiction.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay?
So,
Okay.
you're in receipt of Mr. Finelli's review letter, and also, I think, Dr. McManus.
We are, sir.
Do you have a preference on how you wanted to proceed on that, on addressing those issues?
With the board's permission, we anticipated putting on some affirmative engineering testimony and then getting into the engineering-related responses to those memoranda. Is that
Okay.
acceptable? Okay. Just to orient everybody, the property that we're talking about is Block 26, Lot 2. It's a 14.58 acre vacant parcel. It was formerly used for agricultural purposes. It's situated at the intersection of Dumont Road and Greenwich Street. The property has been zoned to MF1 multifamily housing 1 zone via an ordinance adopted in April of 2019. The applicant is proposing 6 two-story multifamily residential apartment buildings, with each building having between 10 and 12 units. All of the units are 100% affordable. There are going to be 12 one-bedroom units, 36 two-bedroom units, and 18 three-bedroom units. In addition to those buildings, there's going to be a community building that's one story high, and approximately 2,729 square feet. We're proposing to install parking, 2 stormwater management ponds, landscaping buffers.
Not ponds, basins. correct?
Basins, correct, yes, thank you. And a freestanding sign. We'll be reserving the eastern end of the site as a deed-restricted conservation area. And we are requesting one variance tonight, which is a C2 variance to permit sidewalks to be located on one side of the street, where sidewalks on both sides of the street are required. As you already know, our professionals that are with us tonight are Brett Skapanitz from Dynamic Engineering, who is the project engineer and planner, Jacqueline Camp of WRT Design, who is the project architect, Craig Paragoy of Dynamic Engineering, who is the project traffic engineer. And with that, I think, Brett, we can call you up.
Good evening. For the record, Brett Skapanetz, Dynamic Engineering Consultants. If you don't mind, I have a couple exhibits, and I'll talk to them. I'll stand in the corner, and that way I can address everybody, including
Get
the
you
public.
qualified first.
Sure, absolutely.
So can you tell us all a little bit about your background and qualifications, please?
Sure. Actually, I'll say welcome. Thanks for having me back. About 18 or so years ago, I did the Commerce Bank, which is now TD Bank, in front of Lowe's. Thanks for having me back. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I have a Bachelor's of Science degree in Civil Engineering from Rutgers University. I'm a director of Dynamic Engineering Consultants located in Chester, New Jersey. Been licensed for over 20 years and been qualified before over 120 boards in the state of New Jersey.
Can you tell us a little about your planning qualifications?
And I am a licensed professional planner as well. Provided testimony before, again, multiple boards within the state of New Jersey on various projects such as the one we're about to present this evening.
So we'd ask that Mr. Skapanitz be accepted as a professional engineer and planner.
Any questions or concerns?
On his qualifications.
On his qualifications, yes, so. Are there any questions regarding the applicant's qualifications, this applicant's qualifications from the public? No?
Nope, seeing none. You accept him as an expert in engineering and planning on behalf of the board?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so what I'd like to do is start off just by giving a little bit more background on the site.
Okay, so let's get these marked. We have little tabs here. If you could put them in the lower right-hand corner. How many exhibits do you have?
I have two.
So we have an A1 and an A2.
A1.
All right, then put them in the upper right-hand corner. Just keep them all in the same place. So you'll get
Well, I didn't hear you say which one.
Very contrarian.
Not a good start.
So, what is A1?
A1 is entitled Aerial Map with a preparation date of 5/22/19. It is the same aerial map that's within your site plan set. however, it's
There's
been
a color
colorized.
rendered aerial map?
That is correct. The only difference is that it's been colorized, but it's the same one within the site plan set. And then A2 is an exhibit entitled Overall Site Plan Rendering.
And again, it's the color rendered overall site plan render?
That is correct, and it's has a preparation date of June 13th, 2019. So Kate gave a overall description of the location of the property. I'm now referring to Exhibit A1, the aerial map, just to give the public and the board, again, a specific location. Again, we're looking at, this is Block 26, Lot 2. I'm going to call it the southeast corner of the intersection of Dumont Road, which runs in a north-south direction, and then Greenwich Street, which is County Route 638, that runs in east-west direction.
And just for purposes, north is up,
I'm going to say north is to the
left.
left.
And where is, identify the highway and this point where it would be on this exhibit?
Yes, Route 22 is just off the page, just off the bottom of the page.
So that would be on the western side, if
It would
north
be
is
on
to
the
the
western
left?
end, yeah, so following, again, that from the site to the west along County Route 638 to the second signalized intersection would be Route 22. So, as shown in the aerial and as described earlier, on this copy, the property is currently a cultivated farm field. Along the perimeter of it, particularly along the eastern boundary, is currently landscaped primarily with evergreens and a couple-foot-high berm along that edge. That would be the eastern edge of the property that exists and is proposed to remain, as we'll describe earlier. There is a sidewalk that does exist along the Dumont Road frontage, and as I'll get into further testimony, there is a requirement for a sidewalk to be placed along Greenwich, which we are not proposing as part of this plan. The intersection of Dumont and Greenwich Street is a non-signalized intersection. There are a couple crosswalks that do cross from east to west across Dumont, and I understand there is a request for a crosswalk to go across Greenwich, which, again, I'll provide some further testimony to in a moment. So again, surrounding the properties, again, just to orient everybody, you have Lowe's immediately to the west across Dumont. Actually, directly across from the site in Dumont is a power line right-of-way, so the high-tension power lines run along that edge. To the north, across Dumont, across Greenwich, is a residential development. It's been established for a couple decades now.
You know what the common name of that development is?
I don't know. Greenwich Chase. Okay. And then we have Yvonne Way and residential development located immediately to the east. To the south is, again, more cultivated farm fields. Those are the surrounding uses. Again, this is in the MF1 zone, multifamily residential. I'm now going to move to Exhibit A2, which is our overall site plan rendering, and this describes the proposal, which, again, as the copy indicated, is to propose 6 multifamily residential buildings. They're all 2-story structures consisting of between 10 and 12 units. The 6 buildings are shown in we'll call a bronze or copper color on the plan. There's a 7th building, that is the community center of about 2,900 square feet, and is located on the southerly end of the proposed development. The other features in this plan, just for clarity for the public and the board, there are areas of gray that run as a band through the site. Those are areas depicting the location of drive aisles and parking. Any areas that are in a lighter green are areas that are going to be proposed grass or undisturbed areas. The heavier green area, particularly along the top of the page or the eastern side of the site, is that area that I described earlier of the existing evergreens and berming that is currently in place and will not be disturbed. You'll also notice then different dots of various size circles in green, and those are proposed trees, whether it be evergreen or deciduous trees that are going to be placed throughout the site, and I'll get into a little bit more detail on that as I proceed through my testimony. So that's the makeup of the plan. In general, we are proposing, again, those 6 buildings, which is a total of 66 units. The breakdown of the units was given on this copy. To access into the site, we are proposing no access off of Greenwich. You would proceed to enter into the site off of 1 or 2 entrances, that is off of Dumont Road, and we've centered those entrances just at about the center of the frontage of that property. So if you're coming from Route 22, proceeding east along Greenwich, you make a left-hand turn and proceed down Dumont to about the center of the property and proceed into one of the driveways. Circulation through the site, these drive aisles are all 2-way drive aisles, 24 feet in width, and they are bordered by 9 by 18 parking stalls. There's 132 of them. That breakdown meets RSIS requirements. So per RSIS, the residential site improvement standards for the state, were required based on the number of units, that 12 one-bedroom, 38, is it 38-2? I was off the memory here.
Right.
36. I was off with 36.
36.
And 18 for the threes. The RSIS requires us to provide a certain number of parking spaces for each one of those units. When we do the equation and multiply it and add them up, we have 132 required, and there's 132 in this plan. So we're fully conforming when it comes to access, the drive aisles, number of parking stalls, and the size of the parking stalls. From an access standpoint, for pedestrian circulation, I mentioned there's the existing walkway along Dumont Road, but interior to the site, once you were to walk along that sidewalk, to enter in, there is a web of sidewalks that surround all of the buildings and even lead to the community center within the site. So it's fully accessible by the residents that would live there to be able to walk to any location and out to the sidewalk at Dumont Road, which then leads them primarily towards the retail development out towards 22. But if they wanted to, they could get to the other side of Greenwich where the sidewalk on the north side, so on this page to the left, there is a sidewalk that runs, Greenwich Chase? On Greenwich Chase, proceeds to the east and continues all the way to where we stand here today. It's a mixture of concrete sidewalk and then for the last portion of it, looks like an asphalt pathway that runs through along the right-of-way. And just to give a little bit of testimony, I'll touch base more on this from a planning standpoint. Just from a technical perspective, we don't feel the need to provide that walkway on the short section of frontage on Greenwich for a couple of different reasons. One, there's a practical part of it. To provide a sidewalk to nowhere doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. The question usually comes up, well, you start it, and then people will continue to build it. When I look at it from that standpoint, we can start it here, but then there are some inherent difficulties, I think, in getting further. It starts actually with our site. If you're to start at the corner of Greenwich and you proceed along to where the roadway starts to narrow along our frontage, at that point, the grade on our site starts to rise. So by the time you get to the northeast corner of our site, right up against tax lot 3, Robert Francette for the tax map, the grade there is probably 2 to 3 feet above the ground. So there would be some significant grading along that portion of the right-of-way. It would require the removal of the band of trees that we are showing to remain in that corner. So I think I would believe that would be an issue with having to provide a sidewalk to nowhere that also invades Mr. Francette's, buffer that currently exists. Furthermore, you then need to say and look at what goes on further along to the east, and you certainly have a larger combination of properties and other, I think, encumbrances as you drive up and down to be able to continue that walkway in that direction. And I guess it just goes back again to a practical standpoint. One more as a safety standpoint. If I lead that sidewalk to that location, how do I prevent people from trying to cross haphazardly across Greenwich until such time that that walkway is extended? And that is also our concern from a safety standpoint. Whereas people, when they get out to the intersection of Greenwich and Dumont, while we will approach the county to see if they will allow us to get a crossing to go straight across that intersection at Greenwich, we will approach them and ask them of that. There is the safer opportunity to walk just slightly to the west, go to the first signalized intersection where they can cross safely, and then proceed all the way walking to the north if they want to walk all the way to here to a meeting in the future, for example. So those are the real technical reasons, I think, behind not trying to provide that walkway there. I think the last of which is most important from a safety standpoint.
Just quick, you said you're going to ask the county for permission to install a crosswalk where?
At the intersection of Greenwich and Dumont. It was brought up in the review letters to request that. We can. I think, it's another matter of safety, but that's the county right-of-way. They already have 2 crosswalks there running in an east-west direction, crossing Dumont just to the south of the intersection and Dumont just to the north of the intersection. They have not obviously provided one, I think, for the reason that it's just a straight thoroughfare.
But you're going to ask them if
We'll
they
ask
say
them,
yes,
and we'll go.
the applicant will put it in.
Mr. Skapanis, there is an existing crosswalk crossing, Greenwich south, no.
To the west.
To the west of Dumont, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Which
So-
would be at the first signalized intersection, which is at the Lowe's
Right.
driveway.
But then you'd have to walk west
West.
to cross and then walk
No,
east.
they're
Correct.
going all the way east. Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So to continue on with the layout of the site, we also are proposing in the plan, you'll note there's a couple of boxes. There are trash enclosures that are shown on the plan to service the buildings. They are shown in a lighter tan color, the two locations I'm pointing to now, one in the more northeasterly part of the site, one in the southeasterly portion. Also on the plan, can't see it so much near the intersection, but there's a lighter, almost yellowish color in shade, another larger blob of color on the southerly end, and those both represent detention basins. Those are the two that were mentioned by Ms. Coffey. So when you look at the site today, if you have to look at almost in, there's two-thirds of the site flows towards Greenwich Street. About two-thirds of the site flows directly to the intersection, actually, of Greenwich and...
Flows northwest.
Flows northwest. And the balance, or the remaining third of the site, flows actually to the, I'll call it the southwest, to the southwest corner of the site. So in looking at our requirements for stormwater, the number one rule for this plan, because we're disturbing more than an acre and we're adding more than a quarter acre of impervious coverage to the site, is that we need to follow the state rules for stormwater management under NJAC 7:8. And the township follows those rules as well. So the rules basically state that if I look at the existing condition, the amount of stormwater that's coming off this field in both directions, I'm supposed to reduce the flow, the rate of runoff that is going to go in those directions in the future. I also have to deal with recharge of stormwater and also the water quality that is coming off the site. So in order to accomplish that, we provided these two basins, each of which are detention basins with infiltration. However, that infiltration is limited due to the fact that we are in a karst limestone area. We did do some testing on the site, and we did recognize there is limestone on site. As a result, we are not designing these as full infiltration basins, which goes against the best management practices and rules for stormwater design. What we are doing is providing them, there will be a lined basin that will have a sand filter about 18 inches deep, and will have pipe underneath that sand that will allow smaller storms, which are called water quality storms, to go into that sand, into the pipes, and then discharge out to an outlet structure for the basin near the intersection of Greenwich and Dumont. That's located right at the intersection, or at the corner of the basin, closest to the intersection. And for the basin on the south end, it's in a similar location at the basin in the northwest corner, closer to the southernmost entrance of Dumont Road. That will allow water to go through those structures into the existing collection system that sits within both Dumont and Greenwich Street. We've prepared, that would take care of the quantity of runoff and quality of runoff through that outlet structure and the sand filter. And like I said, from an infiltration standpoint, we cannot put the water concentrated in those locations because of the limestone that is in the area. So we meet the design. We are reducing stormwater flows, and the basins are designed as required. Which will minimize, because again, the stormwater rules state that we're supposed to reduce the amount of flow off the site versus existing conditions. Moving on then to, from a lighting standpoint on this plan, we are providing area light fixtures throughout the development. They are a shoebox type fixture, so that essentially if this is a box, you're looking at the profile of the light fixture. The fixture itself is within this gap. You don't see the bulb itself. It's within a housing, and it shines light straight down. It's an LED fixture of about 15 feet in height, and we are proposing 40 of those fixtures throughout. It sounds like a high number, but because we're limiting the height of them, and we're trying to keep the spillage off of them to a minimum, actually more fixtures is better. So with this design, we have zero light spillage at any property line on the property, with the exception of a little bit of light that we have at the driveways themselves, which is a necessity for safety reasons to have a little bit of light at those locations. But otherwise, our lighting design meets all the requirements of the code of the township. With respect to landscaping, we'll go on this a little bit further with Ms. McManus's letter, but I note, you can see in the plan, there's a significant amount of landscaping being proposed. In addition to, one of the keys is maintaining that buffer along the easterly property line. It's a mix of evergreen trees. We have about 91 of them in our plan to be planted. Ornamental trees, 55 of them. Shade trees, 95 of them. And then a mixture of various shrubs and other plantings, which total probably over about 600 to 700 of those scattered throughout the site. You see the larger green circles, but interspersed in those especially along this northeasterly edge and in planting beds throughout the site, you've got a larger mixture of shrubs, particularly along those parking spaces that front towards Dumont. They'll be planted at a height to help screen headlights for the cars that are parked facing that direction, even though they're facing towards the PSNG or the utility right-of-way in the back of Lowe's. From a signage standpoint, we do have the one, it was mentioned, one identification sign. That is located right at the, if you were heading again from Route 22, proceeding eastbound on Greenwich, make a left onto, or right onto Dumont. Just before you get to the first driveway into the development, there is the monument sign. It is 24 square feet in the area, identifies the name of the development, and is about 4 feet in height, all within the requirements, fall within the requirements of your code. But we do not exceed that. We have made, in addition to obviously filing to the township, we've also filed an application to the county. We've also filed an application to the Soil Erosion Conservation District, which are required, obviously because we're developing on a county road, tying into the county system for stormwater, as identified earlier, and we are going to be disturbing the soil, so the Soil Conservation District is involved. I did get a little bit ahead of myself. The one last aspect from a technical perspective is utilities that I didn't describe. The site does have all available utilities, as those of you in the room may know. Sewer, water, gas, electric are all available. We're proposing to tie those or bring those in all off of Greenwich Street, just at about the northeast end of the site. It's the most ideal spot to bring those in. With respect to water, we've talked to Aqua Water. They have available capacity for this project. We had some preliminary talks. We understand that the sewer is your consultant for the JMT is your consultant that reviews sanitary sewer connections. We have spoken to them, supplied them with a plan. They're currently reviewing it, but we are tying in sanitary sewer by tying gravity lines that will extend out to Greenwich, run 2 properties over, so just to about tax lot 4, which is Nelson, and at that location, right in front of their property, is a sanitary manhole, which we would tie in our sewer line, and then it runs by gravity to the north through Greenwich Chase, and ultimately makes it to the treatment plant in Phillipsburg.
Okay.
That's all I have from direct testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, so, question, in looking at the plan, the one thing that bothered me a bit was the parking configuration.
Okay.
Because if you look at buildings A1, A2, B1, B2, you have all 4 of those buildings competing for relatively few parking spots.
Okay.
And I kind of think of the single mom with her 2-year-old and her groceries, trying to walk all the way and get over to, the far building there.
Mhm.
And it just doesn't seem like a very practical or desirable way to have the parking.
There was the initial thought in that was trying to keep the parking suppressed and further away from the residential properties. We did take some further look at that, and we do have the ability to reconfigure parking on the site. It was brought up, I believe, in Mr. Finelli's letter about looking at that.
Do you have some sort of exhibit that would show that?
Yeah, we did do one. I can pull that out and show
Why don't
you.
you pull it out, why don't we mark that as Exhibit A3? And again, staying with the upper right-hand corner,
Which way did you say the first time?
Yeah, the lower right hand, that's all right. As long as they can be folded and it's all uniform for the board session.
I'll make sure it's folded right. That's on me. So, I've just marked Exhibit A3, which I think addresses the comment just raised, and this is entitled Alternate Site Plan Exhibit for the preparation date of today, June 13th, 2019, prepared by our office.
Alternate site plan exhibit?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, can you explain what is different about A3 from A2 besides the fact that there's no color render?
Yes, besides no color, everything is the same except for essentially two main aspects. One is, as you'll see, and you know what I'm going to do?
Yeah,
Brett,
compare
would you like me to hold the other?
No, I think I'm going to go for work here. I'm an engineer. Come on.
It's going to be my Vanna White moment.
So A2 is on the right, A3 on the left. So the two main things I think you'll see is, number one, between buildings A1 and A2, we're showing parking now in this exhibit much closer to those buildings and more accessible to those buildings, where it wasn't before. And then the second one is, we took a look at that, the current drive that is in the southeast end of the site that extends closer to the residential. We looked at that further and said, if we're pulling parking over there, we can pull that down, which has the benefit of less impact to the neighbors to the east. And with that, we can kind of configure it and get more parking. Or you can see there's two bands right now of 19 parking spaces in this exhibit, whereas under the previous one, we kind of didn't have that there. We had a handful of spaces that were running in, I guess, in an east-west direction. We now are north-south, but they're now closer to the residential buildings, which I think addresses the
So
concerns.
same number of parking spaces?
Yeah, actually, this one in its current form actually has more parking spaces than what's required.
We're talking about the alternate plan.
The
It has
alternate
more
plan,
spaces.
sorry, yes.
A3 has how many parking spaces?
A3 has 146 parking spaces.
So 16 more?
So 16 more stalls, and it's really, from a stormwater standpoint, the impacts we look at with more parking is more coverage, right? Obviously, more parking is a little bit better, but more coverage. The basins that we have here were actually over-designed, and so they will still work. So there's really no change to my testimony when it comes to the other aspects of the plan as a result of this change.
Okay, and there was no other logical place to remove pavement? And
You know what? No, not really. The only thing which we could weigh out is we could possibly, there's a band of 15 parking spaces on the southern end, so the southern drive coming in. And the reason we have two drives is it helps to separate. We have the community center where there might be some deliveries and you might have some vans here and there that might pull up. We wanted to provide that secondary access.
You're fine with providing 146, even though the number required is 132?
Yes.
Is there another location where, I'm having trouble reading it, but perhaps next to building, is that B2, that you could remove some parking?
Oh, at B2?
I'm sorry, that's a different building. The top right building.
Top right at A2?
And then down to the right, diagonally.
Down to the right?
Yeah, are those,
Yeah, I mean, we could. I mean, my thought is that we look at the 10 parking spaces that are sitting right here in the corner.
I guess I'm wondering if folks will want the parking in front of the community center, if that might be a convenience that the residents might enjoy. And maybe there's a place that is less likely to be parked. I don't know that I don't know that I personally have a concern about the excess parking, as long as you don't need a coverage variance.
We would need a coverage
Yeah.
variance. Yeah, we're well under uncovered.
We would not.
We would not.
Yeah.
No. I mean,
I'd like more parking, frankly.
these 10, if we were going to the original question about proximity, these are the furthest away from all the
That's true.
streets to any building. So
Yeah.
that was the only reason
Yeah,
I
fair
brought
enough.
those up.
Yeah, but obviously, those are really more intended for visitors and guests of the community.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you, personally, this is, in my opinion, a
Not
big...
personally, professionally.
Well, that too. But when I speak personally, it is professionally. When I'm sitting in this chair. That is a much improved layout on a number of fronts, in my opinion.
I would think from a building management, perspective, it would be better for you guys too, but can we throw it open to some more board members here? Any questions?
Not a question, but a statement. I would be inclined to go with that because you could put visitor-only parking over there, freeing
That's
up,
not true.
residential-only parking, the homeowners or the tenants will actually live, park there. That would be reserved for visitors only. So they're putting off issues of people taking up too many spots because of parking.
Well, the visitors are going to be visitors of the people who live there, though, so.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but
But, yeah.
they'll have that issue.
Will parking be assigned?
No.
No.
Any more questions?
Yeah, well, question, statement, I'm not sure if this is exactly the spot. I know in the parking, which you addressed one of my biggest concerns, and I like the alternate plan here, but there are also islands, be it on the ends, or I believe there's one or two in the middle, that personally speaking, and I was, that I wouldn't mind seeing eliminated, even though it's got plant material on it and everything else like that. And I'm only talking as a professional here, who's one is in the snow industry. All of that plant material is doomed, because that's where the snow is going.
Let me just ask a question. Does the ordinance require the islands or not?
I believe there are planting requirements within the parking lot that are required. I'll have to confirm whether or not the islands are. But maybe the better question is to ask if you don't mind, ask the applicant, how will snow removal be handled? There's typically something that's been thought through, and they might have places identified.
You want to do it now or wait for...
I mean, I've been sworn in, I just answered the question.
Why don't you identify yourself, because you're a fact witness anyway, right?
Yes, he's been
Yeah, I
sworn
mean,
in as
yeah.
a fact witness. So this is Mr. Long from Ingerman. If you can just tell everyone how snow removal works.
Yes, we will contract out snow removal, we'll sign a contract, and it'll be, operated from our management company who is on site. We have an on-site office, and we have a 40-hour-a-week maintenance person and full-time employee as well.
But Beth is asking, in response to Board Member Bean's question about, just for the record, his
Sure.
business
It's
is
snow
landscaping and snow removal.
Sure.
What he's saying is, as a practical matter, that when you remove snow, a lot of the vegetation inadvertently, not
Sure.
intentionally, gets removed from islands. What Beth is saying is there's an ordinance requirement to have landscaping in the parking area. So
Sure.
what direction do you give to your snow removal person so that landscaping wouldn't get inadvertently removed?
And/or is, I'm
Or-
sorry, but
And do you
is,
think his suggestion is a good one, in which case you might need a variance, but it might be a variance that the board would support and Beth might not support.
are there ever instances where snow is literally removed from the site as opposed to pushed over?
Opposed to pushed over? I mean, for the most part, in a site like this, we would not, because it's a larger suburban site, and so, as a result, we'd stockpile where we could. But in the general statement, obviously, we work with local contractors to make sure that they don't, wouldn't damage landscaping, because we need to be in conformance, and we need to make sure that our property looks correct and looks...
Have you encountered this issue in some of your other projects? And has this been a problem?
In terms of snow stockpiling?
Yeah, snow, lots of
removal?
vegetation. Yeah, so like when you're plowing a site, do you typically have an issue in springtime where trees need to be replaced, plantings need to be replaced?
I mean, it's not dramatic, because we are very attentive to that. I mean, like I said, we have a full-time maintenance person who's working and overseeing this, specifically because we don't want to end up damaging or destroying plant material that we'll then have to replace in the springtime. So it's something that it's a point of emphasis in terms of our management company, our handbook and guidelines, in terms of how we...
Okay, but they have an obligation to maintain that plant material, right?
Absolutely, it's part of their site plan
It's kind of
approval.
on them if they don't
Absolutely.
take care of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we take it very seriously from just, from a curb appeal perspective. Dying plantings and landscaping and things like that are serious business that we take very seriously and make sure it's, done. So we don't like to deal with, careless snow removal or careless anything for that matter, because it does come back as a cost.
Is it the issue, and I don't want to obviously speak for Paul, but when he said the plants are doomed, I took that to mean they're not doomed from the respect of getting plowed away. They're doomed from getting snow packed on or in salt and so forth, and the plants get...
Exactly, that is
and,
the stock
right,
violation
so-
and salt.
Precisely. The bottom line is, all those plants are protected by curbed islands. So from a impact from actually a plow, there's almost nothing to worry about. Unless it's some broke plow guy, but, and I think as much from a traffic circulation and drainage standpoint, you need those islands.
Yeah.
You know, what happens within the island is, another thing, but...
Maybe I could just add to that, we do have a lot of perimeter area that, we're showing shade trees on. I can work with Ms. McManus, we have to address her comments with respect to landscaping, but we have a few gaps in there. We could work to provide a few other gaps in the site that allows for a little bit more room for the placement of snow. I mean, I think if we go through the plan, if we were to go through the plan in detail right now, you'd see a little bit more, there are a little bit more area, I think, than you'd think. I know those smaller islands definitely stand out as being spots where we don't want to place snow, but there's a lot of perimeter areas. For instance, in the northeast corner off here, it'll be in the southeast corner. I mean, shoot, at the end of this drive, if we were to plow the snow and push it all back in this location, we could end up providing some open space for snow and tweaking it a little bit from what we have in the original plan.
But, and I'm not sure if this is an analogous, but I know the people who live in the condo areas where, they're using like skid steers, and because you have all this parking area that you've got to clear. So they're not just pushing it up on the sidewalk like some places, they're really kind of removing it from the area, aren't they?
Yeah, you have to clear the parking, you have to clear the spaces and make sure that it's, that you can use the property and usable, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This might be naive, but could you impose a condition that says you can't stack snow in landscape islands? Would you accept a condition like that?
Absolutely, yeah, I mean,
All right.
And another condition, that the applicant must direct that the landscaping not be damaged, and if plant material is damaged or killed, the applicant shall be required to replace it consistent with the approved site plan.
absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions from the board members? Yes.
I have a question. Did you reconsider the sidewalk along Greenwich? I'm only thinking about any students that will be going to school. Now they're crossing the crosswalk, going further down and then recrossing Wyndham Farm, and because the school's actually in the back to the right. So if
Yes,
we had
speak
a
up a bit,
sidewalk-
Pam.
If we had a sidewalk running
along,
they could just go on the Yvonne Way and then continue.
but they would not, but to get from the end of our property, they would be walking in the shoulder of the road for two properties, and there's no sidewalk along the frontage of Greenwich at the development on Yvonne Way. So you'd be pushing them out into the roadway for a few hundred feet. I don't know if that's...
the missing piece.
Yeah.
Well, there's a very large missing piece, actually, isn't there?
Yeah, if I can go back, if I can go back to A1. So the missing gap of sidewalk would be, as I'm marking on A1, from the northeast corner of our property to Yvonne Way, which turns out to be, so we have a number, it's about 550 feet.
And how much is what you would need to construct on Greenwich Street, just for...
We would look reconstructing about 400 feet.
Okay.
So more than half the way is going to be them walking in the right of way, or the shoulder of the roadway.
For that, so and it's always been done. So your issue is, there may be even beyond the kids, or there may be people walking down that path, and when they get to the end, they find out there's no more path. I'm going to cross Greenwich Street right here.
Because that's where the walkway is.
Yeah.
And now they're crossing
They're not
right
gonna
here in the
walk
middle of the
back
road.
and go. They're just going to say, I'm crossing here without the crossing.
It's that, and also there's a large impact to put a walkway in this corner, right where I'm pointing.
Yeah.
Because as the roadway stays level, the grade comes up, and there's a berm about, it's 3-4 feet high. There's a telephone pole that sits right off the roadway that have to be relocated, and all that is going to disturb all the landscaping in this corner. which I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, just
It's
look.
just- it's another
Oh, yeah, I'm
negative
gonna. I
impact.
think Bruce is gonna,
It's-
you wanna call me?
Beth, could you weigh on this? I mean, the issue
Yeah.
I think that Pam has, and I've thought about too, is, you are gonna have kids there.
Mhm.
I think this is outside, this is within, they're not gonna get bused from this location.
Yeah.
Okay? So then how do the kids safely get to school?
So, one of the concerns I raised in my memo that's been alluded to was the pedestrian safety of the site, and I share concerns about the lack of connections of this property to surrounding areas. And so I've raised specifically that I'd like to see a crosswalk across Greenwich Street, which I know is one of the issues, and I think you guys are willing to work with the county on that, so that's fantastic. I see that, and I'll get to the sidewalk, I know that's a bigger issue, but I see the crosswalk as being the most important pedestrian connection here, because it will allow folks to access a sidewalk that goes from this property all the way down to this particular, like this municipal building, and then it also gives access to the commercial uses along Route 22. So that crosswalk, I think, is the key piece that ensures pedestrian accessibility for the residents of this site. That said, the idea of providing a sidewalk along this property's frontage along Greenwich Street, first, it is required in the ordinance, so relief has to be requested, as they've done. I don't ever want to be in the position of suggesting this sidewalk isn't necessary or that it doesn't make sense, but I do share some of the concerns that have been expressed by Mr. Skapinitz this evening. Ideally, yes, I would like to see a sidewalk along, honestly, both sides of Greenwich Street, from this property all the way down to this municipal building. But I do share the concern that while a sidewalk can be engineered and can be constructed on this property, that it is going to result in people ultimately running across Greenwich Street to get to the continuation of the sidewalk across the street, or perhaps walking along the road or walking along the front yards of the two lots, just to the northeast of this property. So I'm concerned, and I do have some concern about the likely connection in the future up to Yvonne, because yes, we could do a sidewalk here, we could do a sidewalk along those two single-family residences there. By we, I actually mean the county, because it's a county road, most likely. But then, in addition, we would also need to work with the county to get them to put a sidewalk along what I think is common open space. That's along Greenwich Street up until Yvonne. So, I don't want to suggest that that's not a good idea. I would prefer to have that sidewalk there, but I'm concerned about the likelihood of being able to ultimately connect this sidewalk along Greenwich Street to another location. And I would be satisfied if we can have the sidewalk along Dumont connect to a crosswalk across Greenwich Street that provides true pedestrian safety and accessibility. And I look forward to you guys working with the county to get that done, and I'm happy to add as much pressure as possible to get that, because I think it's critical for this
So
site.
where would that crosswalk be?
That would be I'll go to the easiest, I'll go to A. I'll go to A2.
That's where it'll tilt out.
So I'm looking at A2, so we're looking at the intersection Dumont, Greenwich. It's going to be at the end of this, where the sidewalk terminates right now at the corner, coming across Greenwich and then connecting with the walkway on the north side.
Let me add some comments about the sidewalk, because in my tenure as engineer, I've pretty much built all the sidewalk that we're talking about. I think, first of all, two things. I think the county is going to require you to put that sidewalk in on Greenwich Street.
Okay.
Let's see what happens. And I also think that you're going to have a real battle on your hands to put that crosswalk in. I completely agree with Beth as far as that crosswalk is an idea. But we have the crosswalk up at the park, and you see what we had to do and what that cost to get them to agree to that mid-block crossing. Now, that's not a mid-block crossing, but it is not signalized.
That's right.
So, those two suggestions, both good and problematic in some respects, they're going to be sitting there at the county admin building, probably sooner the better, with Mr. Gleba and company. And I'd be shocked if he's not gonna, that's gonna be a requirement. But we'll see.
But does that mean that the county would take on the completion the rest of the way?
No, absolutely not.
So they could be creating a hazardous situation.
Can I make a
The county
suggestion?
would be okay, hazardous situation?
No, he's saying, listen, obviously, this is a county road, okay? So this board does not have jurisdiction over that road. This board can ask the applicant to ask the county for things. The board could, if the board wanted to, in this resolution, recommend that the county allow a crosswalk and recommend that the county not require the installation of the sidewalk. But the board has no control over what the county does. What Mike says, it's the county's decision, but make no mistake about it, the board can, in its resolution, if you straw poll yourselves and find out where you are on it, you could request that the county either do things or not do things. They might not listen to you, but you can ask.
Mike, I have a question.
Everyone understand, or?
Sorry.
So, I don't want to get too far back here. We have the alternate plan put up here, so the first thing I'd like to do is maybe get a straw poll in whether you favor this plan or the alternate plan with regard to the parking reconfiguration. So,
Can I just ask one question
Sure.
before? Was there any consideration given to flipping that big basin with the two buildings, A1 and A2 in the back there? And making them parallel to the other buildings?
So to take the,
Swap that with the two that are back.
that would not work. Again, we need to picture where my hand is the crest of the hill. So the way that the water flows off this site is, some goes this way, but the majority goes this way. So in order to capture, and the way that the grade of the site works, this is the highest point of the site. These are the two low spots. I've got water flowing in this direction like a triangle, in that direction and that direction. I'm capturing the water at the lowest point here and discharging it at essentially the lowest point here and discharging it, with the remainder be the conservation easement around the
and I
outside.
understand you had some other geological concerns with that side too, right?
There are, there's just a limestone situation as well, in various pockets throughout the site.
Okay, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Before you poll, Beth wanted to ask a question also.
Yeah, what that?
Oh, well, I have a couple questions, and I want
On
to...
A3.
On A3. All right, I'll stick with that.
All right.
And we do need to go through the review memos.
Oh, no, I wasn't going to bring those up, don't worry. Yeah, I know that's
But she
coming.
wanted to ask certain questions about Exhibit A3 before the board was straw polled about whether or not they wanted to impose a condition requiring that the site plan be revised to incorporate the changes shown in Exhibit A3.
Okay, so, Mr. Scappanos, I just can't see from here. Can you provide some testimony about garbage collection under the new plan? I can't identify the trash enclosure locations, and I just want to make sure we have the same features in the alternative plan.
Yes, we have, again, still same two trash enclosures.
In fact, can you do us a favor on that
Yes.
exhibit? Can you,
Got that green?
Oh, you want me to highlight? Okay.
yeah, not, green is grass, yellow is trash.
Okay, the system.
Similar to A2, we have one enclosure in the northeast section of the site.
Okay.
We currently show the alternate one a little far removed, like the parking on the southeasterly end. My thought is to take that and move it right here.
What's
Which-
there now? Is that
which-
just a grass area?
That is an island, which is at the very end of the drive aisle coming in, makes it very easy for the truck to come in and pull out, and it's in very close proximity to all the buildings.
I think that's a much better location,
That's
if the
where
board's
we-
inclined to do that.
That's where we look to move it to.
Okay, and are we already covered? Okay. All right, thank you. I think that's it.
Anything else?
Can I just ask, I don't want to belabor the sidewalk issue, but I just got to get one question out. I'm sorry. Mike, do you ever foresee the county installing a signalized intersection at Dumont and Greenwich Street? Is that something that...
Not in my lifetime, absolutely not.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
No. And I don't think the warrants would be there for it anyway.
I got comments on that. Well, I was going to say, I've got some concerns there too when we got so far.
Okay, all right.
No.
All right, well, we're still
Okay.
gonna do kind of a straw poll on how we're gonna handle the sidewalk crosswalk thing in terms of recommendations. But before we do that, if there's no other, I'd like to get a straw poll on the configuration issue.
Would it be possible to hear from the members of the audience on that first? If they'd like to know what their opinion is.
Yeah, well, let's open it up to questions from the audience for this witness about his testimony, just what he's presented. Are there any questions from the members of the audience?
I'll tell you what, can I also swear them in? Because let them ask questions, and since they're here before the board polls itself on the alternative plan, why don't you also get input on the alternative plan, so we don't have to wait till the end? So if anyone...
Come on board, then.
I'm going to swear everyone in as they come up. You can ask questions and give your comments on the alternate plan. Identify yourself.
Brad Russo,
Okay, and your address.
206 Yvonne Way.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear that any comments you're going to make will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
So questions and comments on Exhibit A3.
This, okay. So this is A3 right here?
Yes.
And that is?
A2.
A2. Okay. On A2, the top of, can I step away from the mic?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and you can step right near that
The
one.
top of A2 here, like, from what I've seen, there's no parking right here, right?
That's correct.
And then on A3, we do have parking here.
That's correct.
So I'm looking at this, and there's 7 spots, 9 spots,
Yes.
you know, it's 18 or so spots, let's say, if we round up a little bit.
Okay.
If this gets cut off here, and
Yes.
we're adding spots here,
Yes.
where the spots are here should just come up to a little bit more than halfway in between the two buildings. It seems to me like about here,
Remember, they're adding spaces. They're going from 132 to 146.
but they're also adding spaces, but there's 10 here. So it just seems to me that there's a lot more spaces that we're adding if it's coming all the way up here.
We are adding more spaces as a result of this, so we're going from 132 to 146. I think, I understand your question that in that not seeing any there, or a limited amount there, you're seeing a lot more in this location than previous?
Correct. And so in other words, even if this U just came over here and this snapped together, it would still only be about halfway between the two buildings. I'm just not sure why this has to come all the way up here.
These stalls?
Correct.
Okay, so I can understand. We extended the stalls to before the edge of the building just to provide a number, a relative to the two buildings, that would be more efficiently used. We try to get as many as we can to a point where we didn't extend the parking beyond this easterly face and be more impactful to the residents. I believe you're on Yvonne, so to your resident and your neighbors to the east. So you can see that we cut it short at the end of the building, so that the parking spaces, again, as far as the number in here, the number is what the number is to get it as a result of that.
I think it was provided for the convenience of the residents there, so
Right.
they had less walking, and it was also, I think, a recommendation in Mike's report, so.
And the entrances to the building are being, would be flipped in?
Yes, correct, and now into the inside of the building versus as shown in the plan on the outside, yes.
Okay, so with this, there would be presumably a lot less walking for those residents?
Yes.
All right, that was my only question. I didn't know that the entrances, egress,
Yeah, they flipped, correct.
That was the question I had. So
What about the dumpster locations?
So, I mean, that was one of the initial concerns we had, because right here, and just people walking up, that's like the closest to our area.
It now basically takes it from a location
Here
and pulls it down here.
So that was one of the main concerns I was hearing on the block and everyone else. Now, it's just comparing the two plans for, residents here, is the parking in between the buildings, is that something that would deaden sound?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
That was part of the look in taking the entrances, because if we kept them on the outside, we'd be putting the parking on the outside. That meant that the parking would be facing, and again, residents on Yvonne, residents over here on Greenwich, that would be more impacted, whereas now, that activity is all taking place within the building, and those buildings act as a buffer.
Got it. And the same with the lighting for the parking lots, too?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Because those were the benefits I saw, but I didn't know if that would maximize the sound or not.
No, certainly minimize it, because now it's in one location.
So the question before you sit down is, seeing what you see and hearing what you just heard, what is your position? Do you prefer that the board require the applicant to revise the site plan to incorporate the changes reflected on Exhibit A3?
So, yeah, because I'm speaking for, there's a lot of different people here, I'll tell you the different interests. For me, I'm right here.
What's your lot and block? Look, it should be right on there.
5.04?
It's lot 5.04. I believe it's the same block.
Okay.
26.
So for you,
So I'm right here, which is right here. So, obviously, if the parking's away and, people walking through and stuff like that, it would be better for me.
okay, what about people that, do you represent them because you're an attorney or not?
I represent them because I'm a good friend.
Okay.
I don't want to, yeah, so, some of the other concerns are,
Right.
like, Andrea's right here.
Okay, give a lot number?
It'll be 5.03.
5.03, and then,
Last name, what's the last name?
Sherlock.
Okay.
And the Ferrans are out, but there's another one right up here, right? It looks like it would be far off, but it's really not that far. Yeah, right here. And that's Torres.
Okay, and what's there?
So,
What do they
what their concern is, look, that's great if we get this down, but then we're bringing more parking up towards us, and when we, the only resolution we saw that everyone on the block was kind of happy with is, if we're taking, what essentially looks like 18 spots, essentially, even if we brought just that over, it would come up to here, and the fact that we're adding these spots here, we thought we could keep parking like a little bit, well, like, we don't want to make it inconvenient, but just, I don't know, somewhere in there.
Well, just recognize too that we have this where we have the buildings as a buffer, but I know that in this configuration, I'm turning to McManus with respect to landscaping, we already, saw your letter, and we're going to agree to all of your comments. For the most part, I'll go through them all in detail, not every single one. The majority of them. We will go through it and most pertain to landscaping, but there's the opportunity now to concentrate essentially an additional evergreen screen on this side, which now really cuts off everything. And the fact that we're isolating that parking, whether I cut out 5-6 stalls or not, you still have parking in this area, and you still have the influence of some sort of noise, right?
Right.
This buffers it, we can now add an evergreen screen on this side, and now it cordons off and cuts off the entire area.
If you shorten that parking lot significantly, every resident, everybody that went to that, they would make a point, why did they stop the parking here?
Because they're going to cut
Absolutely, the fact that you shortened it up from taking it all the way to the end of the building was actually, nicely done.
Yeah. Okay, so there is that possibility of like landscaping here, especially for...
Yeah.
So we're discussing that, but yeah, absolutely.
And we have no objection to doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. I personally would rather see that, but I know I'm in a different spot. Anyone else wants to?
Yeah, so...
Well, first of all, if you're done, we'll give other people a chance too, so...
Mr. Russo, do we need feedback from you on which of the two trash enclosure locations you prefer? We've got two on there. Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Definitely the new one.
He likes the new one.
He likes the new
The
one.
one
The
that
new
the
new one.
new
yellow.
Mr. Cabinet's new one that you drew. So they're all yellow. So the one that's immediately to the right of, what building number is that?
Just next to building A2.
Okay, thank you. Just for the sake of the record.
By the way, for the record.
That's correct?
Yeah, these are those spots I want.
Okay.
That one's bad.
Right, A2 is that. I got it. Thank you.
All right? Okay. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to ask a question or make a comment? Then please step forward, identify yourself.
I'm Ken Turlaw,
Can you spell your last name?
Sherlaw,
And your address?
204 Yvonne Way.
Do you swear that the comments that you're going to make in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth to help you God?
I swear.
Okay. Ask your questions and make your comments.
Okay, I live right next to Brad, so we're actually probably the most impacted as far as...
Let's get his lot number, please.
5.03.
And again, just, I forgot to write it down. What's Brad's lot number?
5.04.
Thank you.
Our property actually is the closest to the building, closest to the new parking lot, and again, I reiterate the same thing Brad was about, trying to keep the parking lot as far
He wants it a little warmer.
as possible.
He doesn't want it off.
The fact that you're willing to do the beam of trees, basically, we'd like a wall of evergreen here.
We would do it with evergreen trees. They would not be deciduous trees. It only makes sense to do it with the evergreen to match and help
hold on.
enhance the buffer of the yard.
I was listening to the air conditioning conversation.
We have, we're about the only property here that has maintained our beam.
Got it.
Berm. And we're the ones, I don't know who knows.
Yeah, by the way, the berm is on the township-owned property.
Yes, I know.
So I just want to, for the record, this developer is going to be maintaining that berm. You shouldn't have to maintain a berm on someone else's property.
I
know you
shouldn't have had to all along, but
I understand that, but I'm just saying, after this, if this project is approved, like this, the developer will have the obligation to maintain that berm.
Yes, I understand that. So anyhow, we've been planting trees along there, both on our property and along the beach, trying to isolate us from whatever might show up yet. So, just for the record, I guess we're in favor of this as well.
Ah, okay.
Because the road, the road lined up with our property, even though this brings parking potentially closer to us, it's still nominal. So I would agree with that. The trash receptacle, somewhat concerned about that as far as, I don't know if there's ordinances as far as
It's
when.
enclosed by a gate and fencing, by the way. You won't see it.
And Brent, what's the approximate distance to the property line from that, just so people have a sense of...
For the enclosure, it's
Yeah.
going to be, about 1,000 feet. Oh, sorry. Oop, wrong. I was in the other scale for the other plan. It's going to be 320 feet away.
Yeah, I know it has to go somewhere. We were very concerned when it was back here. And I was very concerned with this new design that someone would come up with a brilliant idea of putting it right here.
Yes,
If that happens, we'll be very unhappy.
No, we won't go with that.
So,
So
anyhow, I think that's the best location as far as...
you prefer A3 over the
That
previous
is correct.
A2?
We would prefer that as well. It's better for our
there
other
any
neighbors and it doesn't impact us that much.
Okay.
Is there an ordinance, anybody know, as far as timing for garbage collection?
No.
Because that's...
No, there's not an ordinance.
So put it this way, the board could ask if the applicant would be willing to some sort of condition on the timing of garbage collection.
Mr.
The
Lawson?
applicant would be willing to do twice a week pickup.
Probably the concerns with regard to hours, which is
hours.
a day.
Oh, hours?
But like you're not doing it
You
at
don't want it in the
3
middle of the
o'clock
night.
No, it would be during work hours.
Okay, so let's define it. Garbage collection, pickup, 2 times a week between the hours of what and what?
What's too early? Probably 8 a.m.?
Probably,
We figure weekday.
Between 8 and 4.
okay,
8
so
and
garbage,
4?
garbage collection, 2 times per week during weekdays between the hours of 8 and 4. That acceptable?
Acceptable.
Okay, that one's done.
Are you finished?
Yep. I'm
Okay,
finished.
then I'd like to ask, is there anyone else from the public who'd like to ask a question or a comment?
None at this time.
None at this time. Okay. And board members, are we done with?
I have a couple questions more, sorry. Mr. Scapinus, can you describe for me and the board what type of materials are proposed for the trash enclosure?
Good question.
Yes. Let me see. We have it as a fence enclosure, But I know that there was a comment about changing the material of the fence to a wood
Yeah, for the gate.
material
yeah.
for the gates, which we will propose to do.
And and the outside material is wood fence, is that your?
Yes.
Okay. And is there any did you have a question?
Yeah, I need to, okay, if I'm going to put this as a condition, what is the condition now saying?
Well, I think it's consistent with the site plan. What we've just heard is I had made a request or a recommendation in the memo that the chain link fence that was proposed for the gate on the enclosure, not the fencing, but the gate, should be replaced with a different material, preferably wood or something that would be complementary, and I think they've indicated yes.
And we agreed, yes.
And Mr. Drill, just to make it easy for you, that's comment 4.4 in Ms. McManus's memorandum that we will comply with.
And I'm also...
Okay.
They're going to go through both reports.
I know, but I'm hearing
Okay.
some whispers about concerns that I want to help board members get out. So also, I'd like to hear, in regard to alternative plan, is there any landscaping or further screening proposed around the enclosures? There's some concern that these, even though they're going to be screened, and it's not literally a dumpster out there,
No.
but they might be unsightly.
No, so even, two things. Let me go back. We proposed in the plan, we had proposed the chain link gates. I misspoke. The enclosures themselves are a masonry enclosure.
I thought so, but I thought maybe I wasn't remembering
So it's
correctly.
it's a solid, so it's
Thank
a
you.
concrete block enclosure.
Okay.
Where we have a chain link gates, and we're going to be doing wood per your recommendation.
Thank you for that.
Now,
Yeah.
in the plan, we had already also landscaped around the perimeter of those enclosures on the back side to screen, even though it's masonry and it's going to be more sightly, we're still screening them. We are going to do the same in A3.
So oftentimes there's some evergreen shrubs or trees
Yes.
that are surrounding the enclosure to screen the masonry that actually screens the dumpsters themselves, and so it creates sort of this green wall in addition to the enclosure itself, just to make sure it further blends into the landscape of the site.
Okay, so as I understand this, the condition, the proposed condition that would be acceptable to the applicant would be something to the effect, trash enclosures shall consist of solid concrete masonry block with wooden gates, and there'll be landscape screening of the CMU, the concrete masonry
Yes.
units.
Yes. Yeah, evergreen screening.
Is that acceptable to the applicant?
Yes,
correct?
that's acceptable to the applicant.
And one other question on the alternative A3. So I think we've heard that I don't want to jump ahead, but if this plan is approved by the board as opposed to the other one, we've heard that you're proposing some landscape screening beyond the new parking area, right? Can you edit the plan just like literally by drawing it in, provide some trees? Because I think...
Would you like green?
Yeah,
There we go. Absolutely.
So, I think we certainly want evergreen trees, and we certainly want a solid screen, which I think is easily achieved with evergreen plants. I don't know that a berm is necessary, in part because we have a berm along the rear of the property.
Yeah.
And if the applicant is willing to comply with a condition that provides a solid evergreen screen of this parking, I think we actually achieved the same goal of hiding this from adjacent residents.
Write in what that is. You do it in pen. You got it. You got it. Yeah. Add solid landscape evergreen
Hey, we
screen.
deal with this every month.
You're gonna want to specify the starting height.
There are starting heights within the township's ordinance, they'll have to comply with those requirements,
I
those
wrote
planting
in
requirements.
evergreen screen solid.
Yes,
Good.
thank you.
So if it's evergreen screen solid, you're going to be staggering them and probably 2 rows, right?
Correct.
Okay.
To the satisfaction of the board planner and board engineer,
Okay, yeah.
let's just add that, and then we don't
That's
have
for
to
me.
detail that right now.
Staggered.
Okay.
Wait a minute, were you going to measure the dumpsters?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, dumpsters, thank you. I do have one more question. Can you please measure the distance on the alternative plan, the distance from the proposed dumpster location, including the new change that we've talked about, to the furthest residence? And I say that because
To the closest residence?
Furthest.
Furthest?
Because the purpose that I'm trying to get at is, how far do folks need to walk in order to, to get rid of their trash?
Development.
Is it too far, i.e., do we need to talk about an additional dumpster location, particularly for those homes along Dumont?
I'm gonna go from the doorway. I'm gonna do it as a crow flies for right now, just to keep it, see how simple we got it. It's 240. Is that farther than this over here? Yeah, I probably, well, I think this week, even this one here, that's there.
From there, no, that was closer than that.
It's about 250 feet.
250 feet?
Yep.
When somebody goes to this dumpster, so they have to open gates,
Mhm.
they have to like push up the big lid to this thing.
They're not gonna be, they're not gonna be very tall. They're taken out twice a week. These enclosures are 10 foot by 30 foot wide. So they're gonna take on a couple different, they're not gonna be like a 10, 15 yard dumpster. They're gonna be probably like 3 to 5 yards. 4 yards, but they're gonna be fairly small. So very easy to be able to lift up and throw trash in. They have to be that way for a residential
It's not
development.
like regular trash cans with wheels, it's like a bigger thing.
No, there'll be actual dumpsters. So, what you see in the back of a shopping center, but of a smaller scale.
And normally they have a panel on the side of the dumpster, so you're not lifting the lid.
That's correct.
That you basically just, pull it back, you throw your bag in, you're
And how
done.
about the gates you open? Like if somebody leaves the gate open, is it now blocking like traffic flow?
Yes, it has the ability to get, actually, well, I'll stand corrected. The way that we situated the enclosure, we will situate it in the island, for the new one, we'll set it back far enough, because there's gonna be multiple sets of gates. There's not two large gates being opened up, it's broken up into segments, because the weight of the gates themselves wouldn't be able to handle it. So we'll break it up, and so when they swing open, we'll make sure that the edge of the gate doesn't go into the drive aisle.
But there's no like trash chute that we can have with cut open.
And the applicant also has on-site management, so to the extent that someone leaves something open, they're on the site to put everything back the way it ought to be.
Okay.
All right?
I think that's it.
First of all, I want to do the straw poll.
Right, I think you have sufficient information how to do it.
Okay, so I need, we want to do a straw poll, first of all, on A2 versus A3, A3 being the new one with the reconfigured parking. So, let me see a raise of hands.
But just to be clear, the straw poll is whether or not to impose a condition requiring that the site plan that's been filed be revised to incorporate the changes reflected on Exhibit A3.
Correct.
That's
All
the
right.
straw poll.
So, everyone in favor of making that change to A3, would you raise your hand?
Oh, clearly.
Okay, that looks like everyone. Anyone
I
opposed?
may not have heard what that.
Oh,
A3's that plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
Unanimous.
anyone opposed? No,
Yeah.
it's unanimous. Okay, so, that's good.
That's very
Now, we've left a lot of things on the table about sidewalk, crosswalk, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's our preference? Do we want to, we don't know what, we have no control over the county, but it sounds as though we want to, in the very least, make a recommendation that we get a crosswalk there, okay?
If the board likes the idea of a crosswalk, then the straw poll would be to require the applicant to apply to the county for the crosswalk and to include language in the resolution with an indication that the planning board prefers a crosswalk. And then you could do the same sort of thing on the sidewalk.
Before
Okay.
you go into that, I'd like to make a couple comments.
All right,
And a stronger opinion on something.
okay,
The initial comments that he made with regards to those people being able to walk west and make the cross at the traffic light at Lowe's and then walk east is not viable because there's not a sidewalk that goes east on that side. There's no sidewalk that goes.
No, there's-
I don't even know.
That would be actually on the
there's
low
a-
side only.
no, there is a-
Only on the low side.
on the low side, there's a
Right,
sidewalk.
there's nothing that gets anybody safely
Once they cross over by
There's a shop
Lindy,
right at
they
the
can't walk east. There's no sidewalk there. So that defunks that part of it.
That short section behind the,
Right.
behind the
That's
bank.
why the Supreme Court says that board members should be appointed to have knowledge of local conditions, right there.
The second part of it is, Pam brought up, thank you, that's a quick copy, with regards to, the school-age students. There is no way you're going to be able to have school children cross Greenwich Street there. That intersection already has enough traffic accidents as it is without this development there. It's going to require a crossing guard post, and because my wife crosses at Greenwich and Wyndham Farm, and that's already dangerous enough as it is. This is a far more dangerous intersection before this development goes in. You're going to have to make a recommendation for a traffic light at that intersection if you're going to even think about having a crosswalk there. The other part of it is whether or not it's a viable option or not. Would be, I don't know who. If we go to A1, spin around this way. Sorry, sit up. This could be a possible alternative, depending upon owner of property. What about, I'm not sure who owns, how far this property goes from here, who owns this section here, but what about a sidewalk that goes right to there?
To a private property?
Well, I don't know who owns this part here.
I think it's a common element.
But that doesn't get you anywhere.
It gets you a lot closer that you can now only have to do a 200-foot sidewalk.
Private property.
But it's township property though.
It's township property?
Yeah, the township owns that.
Yeah.
Oh.
So now we have,
Yeah.
if we go right from this
If the
site
township wanted
to
to,
there,
if the township wanted to run a sidewalk there, they could.
Sure.
You can't force the applicant, you could ask, but if they say no, you can't force them to put a sidewalk off their property. But if that's township-owned property, the board can make a recommendation to the township committee, that the township committee run a sidewalk.
if we made the recommendation that they apply for the crosswalk here and they get turned down, if we made the recommendation that they apply for a traffic signal here and they got turned down, our last resort, I would say, would be a sidewalk here, which would be much smaller and more manageable.
May I say something from that? I'm on the corner of Greenwich and Yvonne, on the other side.
You're not within 200 feet of this property, are you?
Pardon me?
You're not within 200 feet of the property, are you? You didn't get a notice of the hearing, did you?
You're on the.
Okay. You gave me a little heart palpitation for a second.
The problem is, where do you go from there, Gary? That's the problem. On my side, there's no sidewalks on my side going down. It'd be very difficult, I can't imagine. And how do they cross the street? Where I'm at, I think that's even more dangerous than the rest of them. I'm there, so I know how many cars go by and speeds that they go by and what happens.
Make a right turn?
Very dangerous point.
No, but once they get,
If they can't access sidewalks to make their way to the school.
Get to Yvonne,
Then
then
you walk through the development,
Yeah.
and go into the school.
Or if they had to apply for a crosswalk, that would be a safer crosswalk here, because you only have a three-way as opposed to a four-way intersection.
I mean, there's also what we call the mid-block crosswalk, which is actually what was installed at the Thomas Stewart Park. That you may have, I mean, it's up there, you see it, and then...
What is a mid-block crosswalk, Mike?
It's a crosswalk, which is typically, as far as the mid-block, is not at an intersection.
Does it have flashing lights on sides when you push the
warning
button?
lights, exactly. And yeah,
And who would you ask to install that? The county? Or would...
No, it would have to be the applicant.
So the applicant would propose
Yeah.
to install it, it would have to be somewhere along the applicant's frontage, and they would be required to request that the county approve that?
Yes, because we're crossing Greenwich Street somewhere, so yeah, it's clearly going to be in the county's bailiwick and jurisdiction. So,
So why don't you find out about how people think about that? That's a new...
I want to understand, so we're talking about, that would be the sidewalk on the applicant's property down a ways, and then a mid-block crosswalk across to the Greenwich walkway, Greenwich Chase walkway.
okay, where,
Mike, show us on the plan where you're suggesting, Mike.
I'm not sure, I'm just saying, if we want to cross that, I'm just saying that's another option to the traffic signal.
Mike,
We're talking what Gary was suggesting, which
to some arrangement that, here. Excuse me. You could actually, I would more or less run it here and then go here. Because this is going right through, this is a drainage facility anyway. So, you don't want to run a sidewalk right through the middle of a drainage area. It's a non-defined basin, but it collects water. So you want to run it...
You're going to run a sidewalk right next to whoever owns that house. You're saying right on their property.
Well, on the edge of the township property.
Okay.
You can do it a number of ways. That would not require any mid-block crosswalk.
But then you still have to extend the sidewalk down Greenwich Street to get to Yvonne Way.
Yes, but you don't have grade problems, and you don't have ownership. You don't have ownership problems. You don't have grade problems.
But Michael, who's going to pay for that? Will that be the applicant? Is that on town property?
Well, that's a discussion to ensue.
But the other thing going to the mid-block though is if they ran the sidewalk along Greenwich Street for their property or some portion of their property.
Guys, you got to have one person talking at a time because this recording is going to be awful.
So, down Greenwich Street or a portion of it, because I know there's some grade issues, and then a mid-block crossing there across to the walkway by Greenwich Chase.
What was it?
I mean, if the county wants to propose that as an alternative, I don't know.
We're talking about a crosswalk. We don't know if the county's going to go with it anyway. But if you ran the sidewalk here down some portion of it, and then a crosswalk down here.
You would run the sidewalk headed east until the point where the grade problem occurs.
Right.
And then run a crosswalk across Greenwich Street to connect to the existing sidewalk that's on the Greenwich Chase side of the street. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I think
I don't know if that is safer than...
Right, but can I say something? If you did it that way, it would be clear that the applicant could be required to run the sidewalk, because the ordinance says so, and ask the county to do that crosswalk, because now you're dealing with their frontage. If you do the other idea, even if the other idea is better, you're asking an applicant, an affordable housing applicant, nonetheless, even more so, to run improvements off its property. So Bruce's suggestion, in my opinion, I don't know about the safety part of it, but that's a very firm legal footing to go with Bruce's suggestion.
Gary, is it safer, would it be safer crossing down here than right at Dumont?
It would be only because of the fact of the amount of traffic at that intersection.
Okay, Gary, can you give an indication of what your experience is? You work for the who?
Well...
But put it this way, are you a rescue squad guy?
Yes.
Okay, so
I'm an officer with the emergency squad, and because...
So you're talking from your experience working with the rescue squad?
Correct.
And basically knowing the general speed of vehicles and the general number of vehicles on certain roads, specifically this one, is that correct?
Not 100%, I can't speak about the number of vehicles to that level, but the significance of the traffic accidents that do happen here.
So you're using your personal experience?
Exactly.
Okay.
Because you have vehicles turning, because it's a full four-way intersection, to where if you cross the street up here, the person that's crossing only has to look left and right. They don't have to worry about looking at all four sides.
So, obviously, there's a bunch of ideas and thoughts, right?
But I think it's coalescing around the one idea which has the best legal support, which is run the sidewalk along their frontage on their side of Greenwich Street, headed east, up until the point where you have a grade problem, and then ask the county if you can install a crosswalk there, then the applicant's done with it.
And I think what I was going to say is, like, with any idea, we need to go to the county. That's the key. So we're up for looking to have the town ourselves. We sit, we talk it through with the county.
I understand, but it would be what the board has to figure out what its preference is.
And then we'll make a recommendation for you to do that.
One last thing I'd like to add is, anytime you think about crossing Greenwich Street, the town's going to have to hire another crossing guard.
Well, I assume
So that's gonna be an additional expense to the town.
But you're gonna have kids, so.
But if you don't have to cross Greenwich Street, you don't have to hire a crosswalk.
Yeah, I think we should be very, very careful on any proposal for crossing Greenwich Street. I mean, what we went through with the park, and there's sight distance, like, excellent sight distance in both directions there.
Well,
That's, I mean, to be honest, to ask them what I'm hearing we're gonna ask them, is to run the sidewalk along the frontage, and then potentially look to do a crosswalk.
Yeah.
We don't have any idea right now, from the information at this meeting, whether or not that's even conceivable. I mean, we don't know from a
Well,
site
I guess
distance
the
standpoint.
question is, Mike, is we're trying to come up with a safe way for kids to get to school.
The safe way the kids get to school is what Gary suggested
But is
with
that-
this sidewalk. That's the safest bet. There's no crossings, it's short, there's no ownership issues, it's a piece of cake. There's no grade issues, that's the answer.
Yeah, but if you look at one of the plans, okay, so then you have to create a sidewalk.
You'd have to bring a sidewalk essentially from, say, A1.
Folks, I'm sorry, we do have to have a record, so we only need to have one person
One at a
talking.
time, please.
So in order to,
Kathy, please, one at a time.
so in order for that idea, you would essentially bring a sidewalk from about A1, you would run it to the east, northeast, through the landscape berm, onto the Lot 5, which is the township of Greenwich, and then bring it to the north to Greenwich Street.
And that would be along the border with what lot, Brett?
That's Lot 5. Lot
Yeah.
4.
Thank you.
But we would bring it to the town, it would mean us bringing it to the township lot, cutting through the berm.
So, Frank, Paul, is that in any way feasible from a township perspective?
I would need more information.
Because Mike said it's a water detention area. so
Right,
we
right.
need to-
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do all that.
I mean, it's not really detention, but it's a collection area.
If I can, now, I want to get back to the intersection, and again, as a member of the rescue squad, I've been on large numbers of accidents at that intersection, and I'm thinking, again, I know the county's going to dictate this, but a traffic signal would also make it way safer for the children, because it can be operated by, I'm going to assume, a crossing guard or something like that to control the traffic flow so that kids can be crossing on a red light so that they wouldn't be there. But my question is, because I read the traffic study and I understood it, that it says it doesn't have enough, the volume of traffic to warrant a light.
Correct.
But does the traffic study take into account the volume of accidents that have taken place there in the last, I'm going to say, 20
Listen,
years?
put it this way, Mike, the county gets asked to have a light installed. What are the factors that the county
Yeah, well, that was
considers?
I can do. What are the factors?
Accidents and volume, which basically would lead to a warrant, what they call a warrant, being issued for a signal or not. Those are the two primary parameters.
And Mike, I know, not to nail you down for anything, but I thought you rendered an opinion before on the chances of a warrant for a light. Yeah.
I did.
And what did you say? Just remind us.
I said that...
Something like never in my lifetime is what you said?
Did I say that? I didn't know if that was to that particular comment. I deal with the Warren County Engineering Department a lot, and we talk about a lot of stuff in Greenwich and other communities. The last thing they want to do is inherit more traffic signals. They will do whatever they can to avoid that. I know that. And if there's not a warrant that's available at this location, there's no way in God's green earth they're going to allow a signal, in my opinion.
Is the county aware of the number of accidents that have taken place?
I don't know. I cannot say.
Do you have any suggestion on how to get out of this dilemma and get on with the
Certainly.
hearing?
I mean, the applicant, of course, will coordinate with the municipality and the board. We are more than happy to go to the county to seek a crosswalk. I would imagine that the location of the crosswalk will largely be determined by the county. If the preference of the board and, let me back up. If the township is willing to do a crosswalk from the corner...
You mean if the township's willing to do a sidewalk?
Thank you. If the township is willing to do a sidewalk, thank you, that is going from the corner of the property along the boundary of lots 4 and 5 out to Greenwich Street, I don't know that that's the applicant's jurisdiction one way or the other. Of course, we would abide. But short of that, if the preference of the board is that we make application to the county seeking a crosswalk across Greenwich Street, and seeking a sidewalk going up to where the grade change occurs, a combination thereof, or just a crosswalk, depending on what's the preference of the county and the board, we would be happy
So
to
in
do
other words,
that.
the applicant's willing to ask the county to do either of those things.
Correct.
So if the board is satisfied with that, you can make that a condition. They ask the county to do either of those, and if the board has a preference for one over the other, just say it, and that would go into the resolution.
Mark?
Just for the record, I'm opposed to any crosswalks, anything going across Dumont, Greenwich Street or Dumont. It's a 4-way intersection, but it's really a 6-way intersection, because very closely you have the exit to the shopping mall there.
Oh, yeah, it's a mess there.
It's a total mess. So
It's a mess.
just because we paint lines on the ground and that people can walk across, it's now safe, it's not happening.
Yeah, it's, when you pull out, busy, it's hard to get across
Yeah,
there.
it's not happening. So I would be opposed to any talk about crossing Greenwich Street.
Yes, right.
How many, so we're talking, how many 66 units?
Yes.
And 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom?
Correct.
Right? How many school age, around the school age kids are we talking about? No, that's probably high school, not high school. About grammar. You know what?
It didn't break it down, it just said 71 school age and 71 students.
51 students, you don't know how many are grammar school age, because that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, we didn't differentiate between that, but, I mean, if there's a distribution there.
Because we've done it, actually, Beth, you did it with the original.
I did.
Right, that's what she's looking at right now. By the way, there was an assessment up on the township website.
That was for all of them.
Right, but I understand, but Beth is looking to see if she can
I found it, hold on.
give an estimate.
But, the other thing I just want to be clear about, the crosswalk isn't just about the elementary school kids, it's also about getting people to be able to access Thomas Stewart Park and also being able to access uses along Route 22, which are across Greenwich Street. So the school is a critical issue for pedestrian accessibility, but I just want to be clear that it's not the only one. So give me 1 second just to pull this document. I thought I had it up.
I mean, if there's no consequence, don't waste your time.
Well,
I want to say it was around 25 or so, but give me, I thought I can...
well, I mean, it's always, there's a problem that needs to be solved, and it's gonna be a combination of Greenwich, the county, and the applicant, and I'm not sure quite where all that falls, and how much of it do we have to solve tonight?
Well,
what do we have to do tonight?
the details would not be until final site plan, but preliminary is for the concept. So I have a condition that goes both ways. If the township agrees to install a sidewalk on its lot along the border with Lot 5, then the applicant agrees to request that the county allow the applicant to install a sidewalk along Greenwich Street to the east and to the grade change, and then permission to install a crosswalk across Greenwich. And then the alternate is, if that's the preference, that would be the first ask, and if that answer is no, then the second ask is to ask the county for permission to install a sidewalk east on Greenwich Street, pardon me, I mixed it up.
I think it would be,
If the first ask is,
Yeah.
if the township agrees to install the sidewalk on its lot along the border with Lot 5, then the applicant agrees to request that the county allow it to just do the crosswalk from the township-owned property across Green Street,
across Greenwich,
Street.
correct.
Hold on, agrees to
So,
request the county.
right, just if you can point it out, you'd have the diagonal, or you'd have the straight across
You're not,
walk.
you're not crossing Greenwich Street.
Right.
We're not, but there's no sidewalk.
Oh, there's no crosswalk at all there?
No.
So
Is
then-
there sidewalk going?
This first alternative, are you telling me, Mike, that the first alternative does not need county permission at all? If the township, I thought that there was...
Well, there's no sidewalk
No, it's only
down
the
to Yvonne.
sidewalk.
Right, there's no sidewalk, you still need a crosswalk.
No,
Don't you?
I guess I don't know how much more clear I can be on this. I do not think that we should be suggesting a crosswalk along Greenwich Street because the county will absolutely not be looking to approve it. I think we almost have a better chance at a signal than a mid-block crossing. The answer to me seems pretty clear. The sidewalk comes out here, this balance of little piece of sidewalk that's missing is a very simple slam dunk grant application, safe routes to school, it's not that expensive, it's right on point, and then that could mean that the township would actually install it, but it'd be a grant. I mean, we're really looking
Okay,
further down the line.
and then we don't need county permission at all?
Just to be clear, we would have to interrupt the buffer,
Yeah.
which is required by the ordinance, so that would have, just so everyone knows what we're talking about.
You need a variance to cut through the buffer there.
Correct.
Yes.
All right, can you poll the board if that's the alternative they want?
Okay, so we've,
No county permission is needed at all. Mike,
we're
one more
still putting
time.
a sidewalk along
No.
the county. You don't need a county permission for that?
You're not putting the sidewalk
No.
in. Mike, one more time, slowly, explain exactly what you just proposed.
Now,
point, this... No, you're not.
This
Yes, you are.
act-
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm talking.
Okay, that Ingerman is required to construct a sidewalk from their property, through the berm, and actually, I would say, and the extension along the township-owned property to Greenwich Street. It ends there. That's
Right.
it.
That's it.
And then the township, obviously, at that point, on their property, along their frontage,
Right.
applies for a grant, or maybe it just builds it in, because it's
township
not, you're talking, what's the scale on this? That was 100. 100? Okay, you're looking at 400 feet about a sidewalk to get down to Yvonne. That could probably be built into, or I can't speak for the town's budget, but that's not that expensive of a construction project. We're looking at, that's what I'm gonna figure out.
Taxpayers ultimately gonna have to pay for that.
Yep.
For projects that, you know.
But it's a one-time expense.
So we're talking 51 students, we're talking about 51 students, all of them which are not going to be going there, but on average, 12,000, 13, 14,000 students, we're talking 600,000. I know we're not supposed to talk about that.
You're not supposed to.
I know.
So don't.
I just don't want to add an additional burden.
We're talking about the tax burden of putting in a sidewalk, is what I'm talking about.
No,
But that's the one-time expense versus the annual expense of hiring a crossing guard.
But you probably need crossing guards in that. I don't know how many have it in that.
No, when you go up Yvonne and you go up Daniel Drive, they need a crossing guard at Daniel Drive.
So they won't need one at Yvonne.
Well,
No, they would need one at a time.
Yeah.
no, you can have a crossing built in. You go
You one at a time, and then one at Wyndham Farm Hall.
Well, if they're crossing, but if they're not crossing, you go into the town, you go into our development.
You may need two.
You drive around and walk around Daniel.
You need
So,
Okay, you got a solution?
well, no, I think I'm just gonna tack on to what we're talking about with respect to this idea. To me and my client, we could do it what we consider as an asphalt path. We have asphalt paths running through here. It would be a much cheaper solution, I think, an easier solution, to just do that as an asphalt path from essentially the end of the concrete of a building, and we run that through, and as just described, from building A1 to Lot 5, and along the westerly boundary of Lot 5, easterly boundary of Lot 4 to Greenwich Street.
Right, and stop there.
Stop there.
Asphalt, and then it's up to the township if they want to continue it or not.
Who maintains that asphalt?
If it's on the township property, the township maintains it. When it's on their property, they maintain it. Could you quickly straw poll on this, because I'm thinking people's heads here, yes.
Okay, so, you heard that one, how many of you would be in favor of that plan? How many are,
The plan you showed me?
Yeah, no, it's different. They just agreed to put the thing in, and then the township can decide whether or not they want to extend it along Greenwich Street.
But the township would still have to put the additional sidewalk up to the
No,
line.
it's up to the township
Up
whether
to
or
the
not they
township.
want
If
to.
they want
Don't do
to.
that, there's still
yes,
a danger.
then you still have a problem.
Correct.
Totally.
They're walking against, you know.
Right, then you still have a problem. Okay, all right, so let's start again on that straw poll. How many, who is in favor of that particular plan? Who is opposed to it? Who is abstaining, so what? So the majority is in favor of that new proposed plan, which would be a path across the applicant's property and then across the Greenwich property to Greenwich Street.
Got it.
Okay.
We're not obligating the town to finish.
Correct.
No, we didn't say that, we're only talking about what the applicants do.
The township would determine whether or not they want to extend it up Greenwich Street.
Public comment?
Public comment's going to be at the end.
Yeah,
The only reason we took public comment before out of order was to see if there was a preference on,
To affect the straw poll, which you just did again.
to see if there was going to be a condition that said that you were going to change the plan to go to A4. You can make comments about this at the end, there are going to be other conditions also.
All right. Are we done with this, with this witness?
I had one other...
I'm not done with this one.
We were measuring the distance for the dumpsters, and then we got talking about the design and everything. Would there be, because each building has a handicap apartment to it, 250 feet is a long distance for a handicapped person, would there be consideration of a additional dumpster here next to the community center, so this way this building doesn't have to go all the way up here? They can go straight across. Is that a viable option, or am I...
We can add one in that location.
Okay.
Yes. Can you draw it in on the plan?
We want to have it right up front.
Yellow.
Well, again,
I mean,
it's
that's
just, I'm trying
coming
to...
into the site.
Well, it's gotta be landscaped then, right?
Well, yeah, it's already going to be landscaped like the other one.
No.
It's right.
No.
It's going to be generally in...
So would winning the lottery, it's just like, that's not part of what
Listen,
we're doing
I tell you
here.
something, this record is going to be awful. If people talking to people in the audience, people talking to people on the applicant's team, people talking to each other, you got to go one at a time.
That was my recommendation. I don't know if, anybody else is, agreement, or if I'm crazy.
I'd like to hear your opinion on it. I mean, you deal with this all the time.
Frank, okay, yes, sir. I didn't know who he was pointing to.
Just for the record, Jeffrey Long for the applicant. From our corporate perspective, this site would work fine with 2 dumpsters. However, we are happy to find a third dumpster location. There's enough space to do so, and generally speaking, it works better to have an extra dumpster closer to people's house. So we're good with that.
Okay.
We accept it.
Okay.
All right.
Take over right now.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Skapanitz, we received 2 review memoranda from the board's professionals.
That's correct.
All right, let's talk about them before we get too much further afield. So the first one
And
that
can I make a suggestion?
Yes, sir.
Unless the applicant disagrees with one of the comments, If they stay silent on a comment, that comment's going to be a condition, and the plan has to be revised. So to save time, you can say, if you agree with everything, say, I agree with everything. If you don't agree with everything, just indicate the things you disagree with, okay?
And we'll provide testimony where requested.
Right.
Okay. So I'm going to turn first to Mr. Finelli's memorandum dated June 12th, 2019.
Okay.
If I may. The first comment I'd ask you to address, Mr. Skapanitz, is comment number 2, which is regarding the turning analysis for the property, and specifically testimonies to be provided as to whether larger vehicles, moving vans, will need to access the site beyond the trucks that have been represented on your turning analysis.
I think our turning template satisfies the fact that a moving truck can get in. We ran 2 vehicles. One was a dump truck of about 30 feet in length, and we also ran a fire truck of 48 feet in length as a single-unit vehicle. I don't expect any moving truck larger than that fire truck to be able to go through, therefore I believe moving trucks should be fine to access the site.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like, whoever's memo is being mentioned, if you disagree, you gotta say something. If you don't say anything, then you're satisfied.
I'm fine with,
So go to the next one.
Okay. Testimony was requested regarding sidewalks. I think we've covered that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
That's correct. That's item number 5.
That was it.
Yeah, let's move on to the next one.
Yep. Okay, I think I can go all the way to comment 15.
Yes.
Moving right along. This was a request for testimony regarding community impacts. Mr. Skapanitz, the applicant submitted a community impact statement which concluded no adverse impacts to the community, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And that was the community impact statement for Willows at Greenwich by John McDonough, dated May 22nd, 2019.
Okay. Next comment is comment number 17. This is requesting information related to traffic, and just a placeholder, our traffic engineer will be addressing that comment.
One more, number 20.
Yep, number 20 was regarding the proximity of parking to the buildings, and I think we've now covered that.
I think we've covered that,
A3.
correct, to the changes in A3.
Yep.
That's correct. And and the remaining comments, we agree with.
Yep. Okay. Next, I'm going to go to Ms. McManus's report.
Yes. Dated June 10th, 2019.
19. You don't even need me. Okay, so
So I'll
Yep, go
move
ahead, while I'm
along,
digging, yep.
to items 3.2 to 3.6, which began on page 4, related to landscaping. We agree to revise, and certainly with Plan A3, we have some further revision to make, and we'll work with Ms. McManus to do so. The only one item I just did want to touch base on, it was a comment related to additional landscaping.
What comment are you on?
Oh, I'm sorry. That would be item 3.4.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
At 3.4, there was discussion about trying to provide additional plantings. I'll call it in the open courtyard area between buildings B1, B2, A3, and B3. We have issues with that because of the run of utilities that we were going to be making in that area, so we'll need to possibly limit the amount of landscaping in that area as a result.
Are you agreeable to providing additional landscaping in that area, consistent with what the utilities will allow and to my approval?
Yes.
So essentially, we can have a conversation after
Yes.
any approval? Okay.
That's correct. We can do that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, okay if I ask a question right here? It's in regard to the same subject.
Go ahead.
Well, I see on your landscape plan, and I know that that's an addition right there, but on your landscape plan, you have, and I think this works in your favor, you have JVES quantity 16, Virginiana junipers. They're not showing up on your plan.
Okay.
And one of my initial thoughts was, even though there's a berm with some natural screening previously built there and everything else like that back area would be a good spot to add some of those if they're already I'd look for them, I'm not finding them,
Okay.
but that area, and that would also then, that'd be a great plant to, help break up behind the new parking area that everybody's, because it could go further back towards the berm and the property line. You know, they're natives, they do a nice
It's
thing.
in there, I think what Mr. Beam is saying is there are trees on the schedule that you don't find on the plan, so they've already been budgeted in the project, so to speak.
Right, so-
And that's a great tree to use
Located,
as a fill-in.
And that might be
Okay.
some space there. And then I still have a comment about landscaping, but I'll wait till we get to another thing about it, about the selection of trees,
Okay.
unless you want it done now.
Yeah, makes sense.
Go ahead, Paul, while you're here.
Blue spruces, you have quite a large variety, or a lot of blue spruces right now.
Okay.
Out here on the East Coast, there's a disease that's wiping out blue spruces on a real regular basis. It's not really affecting the young ones, but anything 10 years and older is really bellying up.
Okay.
I think we should find another solution.
So
for blue
replace
spruce.
the blue spruces with...
More disease-resistant species.
Well,
Yeah.
my choice would be a Norway spruce right now. There doesn't seem to be anything that's affecting them.
Okay, so let's ask, you have a problem with the Norway spruce?
No problem.
No problem with Norway
Replace
spruce.
the blue spruces with Norway spruce.
Okay.
And just while we're on landscaping, I wanted to put on the record,
Guys, please.
I wanted to just put on the record, the applicant did have an opportunity to meet with some of the neighbors on Avon, and we've agreed with the neighbors that we will have our landscape architect walk the property line and the berm that's between the Avon properties and this site, both in the winter as well as in the summer.
This is after the things have been planted? Or before?
So should we be approved tonight? Let's start there. The applicant would be walking with its landscape architect, presumably this winter, and then the following summer, if we can't do it this summer, to see what the berm looks like and to identify any additional plantings that are necessary, and we would then revise our plans. If we're able to do it all before we come back for final site plan, we would revise in connection with the final site plan, and if not, we would do it as part of our compliance submission.
Great.
Okay.
Just wanted to, while we're talking landscaping.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I have two more remaining comments. Number 4.1, which we have talked extensively about, which was about the sidewalk, and I think we came up with
We're good.
Yeah, we're good.
a solution, and I just need to mention it, but we've talked about it a lot, which was 4.2, which was about the crosswalk. And again, we touched on that, and the board does not want to have us to pursue the crosswalk of Greenwich. Correct?
Correct.
That is all.
I don't have other questions to Mr. Scapinetz.
Okay, board members, any remaining questions?
I have a question, Chairman.
Yeah.
The number 21 on Mr. Finelli's review about the adequacy of fire protection, fire prevention measures. Did you hear anything from Chief Nexi? And/or I have one additional comment with regards to the number of fire hydrants on the site. Currently, you have one right in the beginning, front here.
Yep.
Right here.
Yep.
I'm thinking that the fire chief may want one up here, close to these two buildings, so I didn't see one on the site map at all.
And we did not receive comments. Once we receive them, if there is a need to add additional hydrants, we certainly will look to add those where necessary.
Yes, I'm going to put a condition, add additional hydrant, plural, in parentheses, if requested by Chief Meffy.
That's fine.
And that's your buildings A1 and A2, correct?
Yes.
Well,
Or anywhere where he requests
Anywhere
them.
he
Where he wants them, yeah.
All right. Okay, so at this point, okay,
Just want to understand, the only thing we're requiring them to do for this walk is to take it from their property to the property line, and that's it, right?
No, they're going to take it through the berm. The board would have to grant presumably a C2 variance to allow that piece of the berm to be
Right.
taken out.
Yeah.
And if the township allows them, they've agreed to put an asphalt path over the township property
That's what I was...
to Greenwich
Street where it would
Right.
stop.
Along-
Then the township would determine whether or not to extend it further.
That's fine.
but is, if they don't extend it further, there's a serious danger problem.
Well, there is a danger problem.
If the township doesn't want to extend it, the township's not going to give them consent to put the pathway across their property to Greenwood Street in the first place.
That's what I need to clarify in my mind, because that's a critical safety
Right.
area right there.
Yep.
Very critical.
The township has its ability to put the kibosh
I
on
would
this.
say it goes further than if the town's not going to extend it. It's not just the part, we wouldn't want them to put it over our property. We wouldn't want them to start it at all.
Okay, fine, the township
Because
is,
why would you want to cut the
Okay.
perimeter and stuff?
you got no problem with that. Yep.
And I think those clarifications that the asphalt path as proposed would be conditioned upon township approval, is acceptable to the applicant.
Well, you're gonna be, if there's an approval, there's gonna be some resolution for you.
All right, so, we'll take some more from the public then, at this point? Okay, so, let's open it up to, with regard to the additional testimony that's been given, are there any questions or comments from the public?
Come on.
One at a time. One at a time. You've already been sworn in, could you state your name again?
That's Ken Sherlaw.
Go.
Okay, I know there's going to be others, but the path you're proposing right now to go across the back corner of the property, I mean, you guys went through a lot to get this 125-foot berm separation, and now all of a sudden, you're going to funnel everybody? Now you're saying just kids, okay? Well, you just built that huge park back there. You don't think other people are going to go besides kids? And where's ShopRite? This is low income, correct? Everybody going to have cars? I doubt it.
Probably.
They're gonna-
The studies are that most of those occupants are gonna have one vehicle.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of people trying to cross Greenwich, regardless, to get to ShopRite. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm not sure where everybody lives, but Greenwich is a mess.
All right, well, I understand, did you have another solution in mind?
I think you need to try and force the sidewalk along the street, and eventually a crosswalk.
All right.
From what I've
Well,
seen,
okay.
you just basically agreed with them
Right.
that they don't have to pursue the crosswalk.
No, I think, well, first of all, thank you for your opinion. I think what we agreed to is, of the options that were available to us, none of which seemed great, okay, that seemed like the safest option.
That seems like the easiest one to me.
Well, it seemed like from the
And
testimony
all of a
of...
sudden, you've gotten this 125-foot buffer that you negotiated with all of us to incorporate.
And just for
Now
the
all of a sudden-
record, the planning board has not negotiated anything with any of the neighbors.
Okay, well, you required this 125-foot buffer, correct? That was part of trying to get this agreed, to get people on board. Now, you're going to take a path that funnels people, right against, I don't even know who these people are, but right against this property, over to here, or down to here.
Right, down to there, just like that, that's what they're
Right.
saying.
Okay? And the reason you're doing that is to get access to the school.
Yes, yes.
You know how many people are going to go down there, back there? They're going to go right straight across. Right straight across to that grass field that's there. They are not going to
Well,
walk
it's a
down.
detention basin, is what Mike said.
It's flat
No, it's a
grass.
collection area. It's not a detention basin. It's not a, it's a stormwater facility. There's just no outlet.
It is a grass field that you guys, the township mows. So it is a perfect grass field.
Yeah, it's a nice field.
People are going to walk across there. Right across these neighbors' backyards.
All right,
And you're going to funnel all those people.
okay.
And I'm not sure, you're talking about the six-way intersection. I'm not sure who was here that approved that disaster. But why did
No one on this board.
But
Why
you
didn't
agree
funnel
that
the
it's,
roads?
you agree that it's a problem over
It's
there?
an absolute problem.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous, dangerous area.
All right, okay.
But
Thank you. Anyone else? I don't think we've sworn you in yet, so...
A new face.
Yeah.
Ken Torres,
And that's
Torres, at 200 Rivada Way.
Do we know his lot number?
No.
You can,
Are you from Yvonne?
Is that, which one?
What's your address, sir?
200 Rivada Way.
200 more.
Can you point to your lot?
Oh, you're
Yeah, on the top.
the first house on the right when you pull in?
What's the lot
Yep.
number,
Oh,
please?
where's the,
Here, it's on this one. Actually,
are you this guy?
Yeah.
You're the
Yep.
What's the lot?
5.01.
Thank you.
And actually, if you want to, can you put that up there?
Okay, Can you please
This
raise
might
your
be
right
the better-
hand? Can you raise
We
your
swear
right
you in
hand?
here?
You swear that any comments you're going to make are going to be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Questions and comments, go for it.
Just to give a better visualization, if you're looking at this, and
He's
you're
referring
starting
to Exhibit A1.
the sidewalk on A1, if you're expecting people really to go through it, just like the other Ken said, it's just not going to happen. There's a clear path that's going to go right through here, and it's going to be all day, night, whenever anybody feels like walking through. You know, it's right alongside of our house, and it's just going to, no one's going to ever walk around and come back up just to get to the school. And so I think our better option would really be to revisit this whole somewhat mess down here, and maybe take out a traffic light and put another traffic light somewhere else, and maybe even close off this road.
I'll be honest, that's something that's not within the purview of this board. That's the township committee could make recommendations and all.
If we're truly looking at safety, we really need to look into that, because
Yeah.
it's a mess down there.
But did we say that we're gonna try to pursue that as option one? Or
No.
is this option one?
The only option is what the poll was to
So,
cut the path.
The preferred means.
Right.
so would it be possible to say the township should explore as the first option to work with the town and see if we put a light there and a crossing?
But,
And if it
The
fails...
township can do anything they like.
No, I'm not the board recommending.
The board can do whatever you want to recommend.
I'm just
If
wondering
there's a
how it
ma-
feels about that.
If there's a majority of people that say it, I'll write it. If there's not a majority, I won't.
Might be a light there with the crossing road. I don't know how I feel about that.
The best option is the light. You're right. And I know I kind of poo-pooed the idea of the light, but I'm just,
The poo-pooed it, all right.
well, no, but because of the reality of what my experience was dictating. However, to make a recommendation for some investigation, what is the harm? Because that's the best solution. A light is the best
I think it's the
solution.
best solution. What's
You're
going
right.
on is
Why not?
pursue it.
Exactly.
And if we can't pursue it, we got other options.
Right.
Might be a separate board action.
Sure, you do anything you want.
That does it. Yeah.
Yeah, so which is the first preference, the light?
So my motion is, this is the motion that we,
Not a
it's a
motion.
recommendation that we pursue, trying to get a light there.
I think what you're asking is, you're asking for a recommendation, which is really kind of separate from this application, although obviously related. No?
No. I think, Frank, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
For the good or the bad, I know how the man thinks.
But he wants us to make a recommendation to the township committee, right?
No. This is what I believe he wants.
Okay.
He wants, what I said before about the applicant shall construct the asphalt path, blah, 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 that's option 2. What Frank wants as option 1 is that this board require the applicant to apply to the county to put a traffic light in on the corner there with a crosswalk.
But option 2 would be that. Option 2 would be, we have them build a sidewalk to that point and put the crosswalk up further. The sidewalk that you said you were gonna do anyway.
I was listening, I'm still
Okay.
about requesting, I'm looking at...
That one was unanimously poo-pooed in the prior crossbow.
I just want to go back to the request of the county, and I'm actually going to look to Mr. Finelli on this in a bit, but you're asking, we asked the county if the county should put in a signal and a crosswalk there.
Correct.
We just make that request.
That's correct. That's the first option. If they say yes, that's wonderful. If they say no, then you go to the second option.
Now, we can take it one step further and have the township also do that.
Oh, yeah, but that would be up to the township whether they want to join in the request. The planning board would be requiring the applicant to request, and the planning board would be saying in the resolution that they recommend that as the first option.
And that, I just want to further just clarify for the record that the obligation for payment of said signal or crosswalk, we're making the request, that's it. We're not obligated to pay for said signal or crosswalk.
I thought you work, Mike, and they go to the county pay for it anyway. They have to deem that it's necessary.
That's a very, very interesting question, because they're very expensive.
How much?
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Probably $250,000 to $300,000, I'm going to take as a first guess.
Yeah, so the best you're going to get is maybe a cost sharing, to be honest with you. And how that really plays out, breaks down, if you do some sort of prorated, the county's even willing to participate.
Would all funds be able to be used?
No.
Improvements to support affordable housing?
$250,000? You think the judge is going to approve it?
Maybe a little bit?
Maybe you can, listen, maybe you could, you have to ask the judge. I don't know if the judge would approve the whole 250.
Yeah.
You get a recommendation from the master, let's say you had enough money in the affordable housing account, maybe, but I don't want to say yes when I'm not sure it's yes, and my gut tells me if you get a piece of it, you'll be lucky.
Well, I
So-
think it's a good start.
All right, so where are you at now, Frank?
I'm at, let's recommend as the first option to get away in the crosswalk there.
So you're recommending that the applicant request a light and a crossing
At the corner of Dumont and Greenwich.
at the corner of Dumont and Greenwich,
And we'll bring
and
it to the township, I think the township is joining us.
and anything else?
Okay.
Okay.
First option, and the other one now becomes the second option.
So do we need to do another straw poll to agree on that?
Yeah. Does
Okay.
everyone want to make that the first option?
Okay, so let's see, raise the hands for everyone who wants to make that the first option as compared to the previous. Yeah, okay.
Ask if there's any no's.
Are there any no's? We have one. You're not no, are you, Joe? No, yes. You're yes, okay. You have the other hand up. I was... Okay. All right. Did we cover the public? Is there anyone else from the public who has a question or comment regarding this particular applicant's testimony? Nope.
This witness.
Nope,
that's
this
what-
witness, this witness, yes.
Okay.
Okay, I think you have another.
I do. This one hopefully will be a little quicker. So next we have Jacqueline Camp, the project architect. Ms. Camp, you've already been sworn, but could you tell the board a bit about your credentials and experience, please?
Yes, I'm an architect. I was educated, excuse me, at Temple University. Have a bachelor's degree in architecture. I'm a licensed architect in New Jersey and in Pennsylvania with approximately 20 years' experience in affordable housing development and design.
So we've asked that Ms. Camp be accepted as an expert in architecture.
Any questions or qualifications? If none, then we'll recommend that we accept.
You going to accept on
I
behalf of the board?
accept on behalf of the board.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay. So Ms. Camp, I don't know if you want to, where you want to be.
I think over here is probably easiest.
Okay, and can you review what what buildings we are proposing
First,
to?
the drawings are up there, they're the plan set, correct?
Yes.
So we're not marking them as exhibits?
Yeah, all we brought are what you already had in the zoning submission.
Okay, great.
And really, I just wanted to give you a quick look at what the buildings themselves will be. We're proposing 6 two-story multi-unit apartment buildings with between 10 and 12 units per building. You've already been told the unit count, but just to repeat, 12 one-bedroom units, 36 two-bedroom units, 18 three-bedroom units. The character of the exterior of the building is very traditional, and we feel contextual in terms of the surrounding community, the flavor of the architecture that exists nearby in the neighborhood. We will be cladding the exterior of the buildings in a combination of a stone cladding for some accent areas and a water table around the building, and fiber cement siding for the remainder of the exterior cladding. The porches will have standing seam metal roofs. We have not yet finalized a color palette for the buildings, but as you can see in these renderings, the intention is to use both the changes in elevation of the front of the building, so the bumps in and out, and subtle changes in the color of the siding to give the buildings some more definition and help the architectural features of the buildings stand out. And then we also have plan views. I don't think there's really any point in walking you through all 6 buildings, so this is just kind of a representative.
And Jackie, just tell us what sheet you're referring to for the record.
This is sheet A101 from the zoning submission. So this is a representative building. This is Building 1, and the second building, Building 2, is also a very similar floor plan. But it shows that we have a ground floor with a combination of unit types. There will be 5% of the units will be fully ADA accessible per UPass requirements. And those will be a mix of the 1, 2, and 3 bedroom types. Those will be at the ground floor, in addition to units that are fair housing visitable at the ground floor. And then at the second floor, we also have another level of flats, very similar units, with the only difference being that you walk up a flight of stairs to get to them. Every unit has an individual entry from the sidewalk that runs along the entry side of the building. So there are no common stairwells or anything like that. Every resident has their own front door, and they walk directly into their own unit. And other than that, they're apartment units. They have living room, dining room, kitchen. They meet all of the requirements of the New Jersey NJHMA for bedroom sizes, the amount of storage in the units, the size of the living area, the layout of the kitchen.
Thank you. Can you review the community building with us?
Oh, right. I also have a plan for the community building. It is a 1-story building, approximately 2,700 square feet. Nope.
Somewhere.
This one? No, I think it's that one
If it's not there, don't worry, someone
Okay,
just...
yeah, I think we're missing the community
That's all right, so
building. I can
somebody-
describe to you.
No,
It just-
we'll give you that, we'll give you a...
No, that's fine. You know what, maybe it's up in the other set.
Okay. 8205.
Oh, yeah, there, okay. Oh, so the plan, yeah, the plan and the elevator.
Just put it right up on the board. There you go.
Okay. All right, so this plan's a little bit small to see from a distance, but the community building includes a community room for activities and gatherings, a fitness room for the residents, a maintenance suite that will allow the full-time maintenance staff to store their equipment and have a work area, management office, and a resident service office also in the building for the on-site staff.
Okay, management office, is the person that runs the building live on site?
I don't,
Or does he live on site, or?
No, we'll not, we don't have live-in supers, but we do have 24/7 coverage, and since we have a few hundred units in Warren, Hunterdon, Somerset counties, we have someone that's on call at all times to deal with it, but we do have 40 hours a week maintenance person with a full maintenance shop that's on site, including, all the accoutrement you need in terms of, tools and workshop, things of that nature, which would be located in this building.
And just for the record, that was Jeff Long speaking.
Jeff Long for the applicant, sorry.
Thank you.
Any questions for professionals?
I just have one question. In my June 10th memo, item 4.3, requested information on the colors that were proposed, but I hear that that's something that is not quite complete yet, so is this a condition
We can make it a
for
condition
final?
saying that the applicant shall indicate the colors of each proposed building materials as part of the final site plan submission.
That's fine. We can say that there'll be of a neutral palette, if that's helpful.
Okay, with neutral palette, but with the detailed, natural colors to be submitted and approved prior to final?
Exactly.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, any questions from board members? Mike? Or- Good.
Laundry. Will they have a laundry room in those units?
The laundry is in the units.
I didn't see anything on the plan.
Yeah, well, we want to,
Well, Jeff, up to the mic,
sorry,
please.
sorry, excuse me.
Jeff Long for the applicant.
That's good.
In answer to, sorry, I'm so used to walking with a microphone, it's, no, but, to answer the question there, we just, delineate closets because we have not done, MEP set for, at this point in the design, but, you know, we have a washer dryer, full-size independent washer dryer.
In every unit.
In each unit, and then for handicap accessible units, they will be handicap accessible side by side. So sometimes we do stacking units for the, you know, non-handicap, and then we'll do side by sides for handicap accessible units, so,
One more question. Are these units going to have sprinklers?
yes.
Any other questions from the...
Storage, where is the resident storage space? I noticed that the elevation is 10 foot first floor, 10 foot second floor, and the total height of the unit is 34 feet, so is there attic storage, or what is that?
The attics, Jeff Long for the applicant again, the attics are not accessible, so that's just void space, and then you just have, the closets pretty much that are in the units as acting as storage. Are you asking about like outdoor storage?
No, I was thinking about seasonal storage. People are where are they gonna put their Christmas tree? Where are they gonna put their decorations? Where are they gonna put their, typically there's sometimes basements in units like this where they have, gated, or little small fenced areas where they can put.
Yeah, there won't be any basements here. We could look at exploring doing some storage cages in the community building, but our general experience is to not do, independent storage sort of in
Do
the,
people use mini storage facilities if they have?
I mean, for the most part, that tends to be the case, either, mini storage or look at some type of limited storage, gang storage units, but that's, I wouldn't say it's a heavy demand item, to be quite honest with you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Kathy?
What kind of stone is proposed on here?
We have a sample.
And are shutters going to be used as well?
No, we're not proposing shutters.
Looks unfinished without it, without the shutters. My opinion.
You have a stone sample?
I do have a stone board that we've used elsewhere, so it's not representative necessarily of the color scheme, but just to give you an idea of what the material would be. This is Jeff Long again for the applicant. Sorry.
Why don't we put it,
So
bring...
I'd rather not enter that as in evidence if I could, but stone material
So-
shall be, we don't have to pick a color, but that will be done prior to final, but give me a,
Environmental Stoneworks is the company that makes this material. Sure.
and is that a particular style? What does it say on it?
It's the Ledgewood style.
Leadstone.
Ledgewood, or
Ledgestone.
sorry.
Can some of that be used on the garbage,
No.
kind of blending with the...
Dugout?
I don't know that, I don't know how useful it's going to be, because one of the things the applicant has agreed to do is to put plantings around the outside of the shelter, so we're not going to get a good view of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other?
So is that actual stone, or is that a stone veneer?
It's a stone material, but it's not like,
It's synthetic stone?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Looks good. Over the porch?
Yeah, seam metal roof.
Over the porch?
Over the porch.
Only at the porches.
Over the porches
Asphalt
only.
shingles on the
Asphalt
high
shingle on the
roofs.
roof. All colors,
Have not been determined.
right, all colors to be selected as part of the final site plan process.
We know it's a neutral palette for now.
Right.
I could do
my
Vanna White showroom again. So, just basic roofing material. Okay. And then just the seam metal, like something, not necessarily color. But
You want to show that?
Listen, just so you know, anything that's being said there,
We're not picking up.
we're not picking up. So if you want this to be any part of a condition, you gotta tell us what you're saying. In other words,
I think they're just looking for information at this point.
I understand, but they can get it...
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Or question first, is it dimensional shingles?
What's that?
If not, I would recommend that be
What is dimensional shingles?
instead of a flat shingle, it's raised.
There are different degrees, though, and so the product that we typically use is a dimensional shingle, but it's not all the way at the top of the line dimensional shingle that would be a premium that would be beyond the budget of a affordable housing complex.
So what you're proposing for the shingles is Timberline, and what's the, is Timberline... It's Timberline HD. Is it Timberline HD or Timberline Ultra HD? And then show it to that board member, please.
I don't think you have a choice. It's in the,
That's what I gather.
Yeah, just basic timberline
Right.
shingles.
Which, based upon the pictures in each of these, is what I'm referring to. It's not a flat shingle. so
Yeah.
I'm satisfied with that.
Oh, you're satisfied with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. That's,
Yeah, it's not just like paint butters, that's what you're at. No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Frank?
Just a question on I heard neutral colors.
Neutral palette. You want to know what that means?
Yeah, tell me what that is.
I'm going to defer to the architect that made the...
Yeah. Neutral palette means what?
What we are looking at right now is using grays and blues, a family of grays and blues, and then choosing the stone and the shingles in probably somewhat variegated patterns that...
Dimensions, grays and blues?
Yes, yes.
Because I thought the example we saw, was the example that you had.
Looks like grays and blues to me.
Not saying yellow, right?
Okay, well, there's a variety.
That's what I'm saying, there's more of a variety
Just so you
than we
understand.
selected.
I don't know if you've seen this. This is on the township website, and it's an amendment to the Affordable Housing Agreement for this site that the township entered into with Ingerman. It's very short. Site plan to be substantially consistent with the illustrative site plan. I already asked our planner. She said, yes, it is. Section 2, the architecture and design of the buildings shall be substantially consistent with the architecture and design of the buildings reflected in the pictures of Willows at Bailey Corner development located in Piles Grove, New Jersey, as depicted in the photo exhibit, except stone veneer, we picked up the stone veneer, and the land use board has the ultimate choice of cladding design and color, stone design, and roof color. And so that's in accordance with Exhibit B. So the Exhibit B, if you look at it, the township committee at least, and the applicant agreed, did not want all 6 units to be the same color.
Okay.
They wanted it broken up in different colors, because they thought that that would make it look like more like townhouse units. And so that's what the township was looking for, and that's what the applicant agreed to. So when you say neutral palette, you might want to
talk to them and then reconsider the answer.
So Jeff Long for the applicant again. Long, yeah, exactly. So just for clarity's sake, we have indicated in this presentation that we are going to use different variations of color to differentiate and give depth to the buildings themselves. I think the concept of neutral just might have gotten lost a little bit. It was more, we talked explicitly about not doing earth tones, which I think we all agreed. So that was more of what the concept that we were just talking about, was that we're going to use variations of blues and some other lighter colors,
No
yes.
earth tones and colors to be consistent
Consistent with-
the amendment to the affordable housing.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Yes.
And it's selected as part of the final site plan approval process.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Gary?
One last one. With regards to cable television or internet, satellite dish installation on the units, because there's multiple, and I would think we would want less satellite dishes.
How do you handle that?
Yeah, how do you
How would
handle
that
that?
handle?
Good question.
No satellite dishes.
Okay,
None allowed at all?
Okay.
No.
that takes care of that.
That's easy.
Is that a standard condition in all your projects, just out of curiosity?
We try to as much, especially in the new stuff. I mean,
You have any satellite dishes in Clinton Township?
No. No, but, and all the units are cable ready. So, Comcast, Verizon, and so we encourage that to go there, so.
Okay, that's it. Any other questions from the board? Members? All right. Public? Are there any questions from the public with regard to the testimony of this witness?
Nope.
I don't see any.
All right, thank you, Ms. Kim. All right, our last witness is Craig Paraguay, who is the applicant's traffic engineer. Craig, are you? All right. So, Mr. Paraguay, you've already been sworn, but can you please tell the board a bit about your credentials and experience, please?
Sure, I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Virginia Tech. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey and been working as a traffic engineer for 19 years now. I appear pretty much on a nightly basis before boards as an expert in traffic throughout the state.
Any questions about this witness's qualifications?
Yes.
If not,
Where was he when we had all that traffic discussion earlier?
That's the question I got. Anymore. You guys got it all figured out. That's why I got up here.
all right, then, I'll accept this witness on behalf of the board. Did I do that right?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right.
Charm.
Mr. Paraguay, can you please go over your traffic analysis of the proposed project?
Sure. And you want me to stay here and so you don't have to turn your neck that way?
Whatever you need to do.
I don't need to point at the board, so I think we're kind of looking in the same direction. And I did listen to all the conversation before. Obviously, there's some challenges with the pedestrians, a lot of viable solutions. They all had challenges. We're happy to go to the county with what was discussed. I think all that works. What my report focused on was the vehicular traffic impact of what we're proposing. And I'll give you sort of the brief version. I see it's getting late. I'll give you the brief version of what our report goes through, and then I'll obviously be happy to give any detail if you want any more information. What we did is we focused on the corner of Greenwich and Dumont, right at the closest intersection. Obviously, it's going to be the most impacted. And we took traffic counts there, weekday morning and weekday evening peak time periods, 7 to 9 in the morning, 4:30 to 6:30 in the evening. And what we're looking for is to isolate the busiest hour within each of those time periods, the morning peak hour and the evening peak hour. That's basically when the road's going to be the busiest, rush hour time period, and a residential development's going to generate its most traffic. So the worst case scenarios, the worst 2 hours of the day. We take those traffic counts, establish a baseline of what the existing conditions are, and then add a growth rate to that to account for future development from other projects. New Jersey DOT publishes that growth rate for this area as 1%, so we grew those traffic volumes by the prescribed growth rate to get a future baseline, what it would be like without this project in the future. To account for the traffic generated by this project, we consult the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual. That's what traffic engineers use to project traffic volumes. In this case, we're looking at multifamily residential housing, and we use the 66 units that are proposed as the independent variable. And it tells us how much traffic this project's going to generate at its peak times in the weekday morning and evening. And based on the ITE data, the morning peak hour would generate a total of 32 trips. A trip is a vehicle either entering or exiting. Obviously, in the morning, most are exiting, people are going to work. In the evening, they're coming back. So 32 trips in the morning, 41 trips in the evening. And typically, what's considered a significant increase in traffic, with New Jersey DOT and the ITE call it significant increase, is 100 or more peak hour trips. So this generates less than half of what will be deemed a significant increase in traffic. Nevertheless, we still press on with the analysis. We add those numbers that this project would generate on top of those grown future traffic volume numbers, and prepare an analysis of the intersection, a capacity analysis. Again, this is vehicular capacity. It's not necessarily considering the pedestrian routes and all the conversation that happened earlier. This is more for vehicular capacity. And what that capacity analysis does is give us a delay per vehicle, which is then related to a level of service, with level of service A being the least amount of delay, level of service F being the most delay or a failing condition. And in this case, this intersection in the future, with or without this project, operates at least a level of service C or better in the morning, and then a D in the evening. Same levels of service with or without this project. Again, I mentioned before that significant increase in traffic. This is an insignificant increase in traffic, less than half, so we wouldn't expect a big change. But the analysis bears that out, that we don't change those levels of service with the addition of this project. There was a request for testimony on that northbound approach of Dumont, that stop sign at Greenwich. If you do a comparison, the no build without this project to the build, in the morning peak hour, we had an average of 1.7 seconds per vehicle of delay, so certainly not a lot. And the queue length increases by less than one vehicle. It's mathematically, it comes to 0.1 vehicles. Obviously, you can't have a tenth of a vehicle, but it's a mathematical equation. In the evening peak hour, we increased that delay by 2.2 seconds per vehicle. Again, very minimal. And the queue length increase is calculated to be 0.2 vehicles. So from a traffic impact perspective, we certainly do not create a capacity issue at that intersection. The intersection will continue to work well in the future, with or without this project. If the county is willing to install a traffic signal, you'll see those levels of service get better, but in the event that that doesn't happen, from the vehicular traffic standpoint, this project can still function. Like I said, I'll give you any more details you want, but if you've been listening to a lot of traffic talk tonight. So.
Any questions for the board members for this witness?
Is there any of your data sources correlate safety with pedestrian accidents at the intersection?
Safety is more a function of the design, the layout, the roadway design. It's not necessarily the traffic volumes. Like I said, I heard the discussion before about the pedestrian crossing, and every solution that somebody came up with can work from a traffic engineering perspective, and also has its challenges. So we're going to have to see where the county wants to go. And like I said, we're happy to take the board's preference and back that up, because as I said, any of those solutions can work from a traffic perspective, but it's a matter of the county's preference.
Okay. So it wasn't actually part of your analysis?
No, this was a vehicular analysis, yes.
Any other questions? Jerry?
Are we allowed to ask him a professional opinion with regard, not any disrespect to you, Mr. Finelli, but...
Sure.
Oh, I was going to ask him the same thing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Do you think the county would put traffic light there because of the pedestrian safety and vehicular safety?
Well, to get a traffic signal installed, there's warrants that have to be met. You alluded to that earlier. The traffic volumes are the key component, which I don't think we're going to get there. The traffic volumes are not heavy enough. But accident history that could be resolved by a traffic signal is considered. And pedestrians in proximity to a school are considered. I don't know if this rises to that level. That's more subjective, and that's where, we can throw our support to the county doing it. But I would give it a less than 50-50 chance that they're going to go for the signal, but
You didn't say not in your lifetime, so that's good.
Certainly, certainly no problem to ask.
Did you have a question, Mike? or-
No, I was gonna ask, in essence, the same question, that is,
So if it's already asked, then you don't have to ask it.
well, no, I'm gonna take it a little further, John.
All right.
Yeah, just because. Okay, as you sat in the back and listened to all the back and forth and so forth, even about the sidewalk extensions and all the other discussion that occurred. I mean, in your professional opinion, you know the area somewhat from just, working, doing your report and whatnot. Do you have any other suggestion relative to, the crosswalk issue we discussed? Where, the sidewalk construction issue we discussed? I mean, you pretty much support what the board and your client has agreed upon?
From just a blanket traffic engineering perspective, ignoring where schools are and where things are, the best solution is to put a crosswalk at an intersection, not a mid-block crossing. That's why I'm sure you got a lot of trouble from the county trying to do it before. Used to be that the state had to approve all mid-block crossings because they're so frowned upon. Putting a crosswalk across that intersection from ramp to ramp is not a problem. But that being said, I understand we're talking about you want to get the school children across. It's not as comfortable at an unsignalized intersection to have a crosswalk there. So the secondary solution would be that they don't have to cross. We can go the back way, your suggestion, which I thought is probably the path of least resistance in terms of the county. But again, all viable. Even a mid-block crossing, you can do it. You have one just to the north.
We sure do.
With the rapid flashing beacons. It is doable, but the county's gut reaction would be to put it at the intersection.
Any other board members? Paul?
In your study, I'm curious as to 50 yards below that intersection is also another intersection that the traffic flow, the queue, is significantly different. Too far away to be considered in your planning with this one?
You're talking about the Home Depot?
The Home Depot, ShopRite? I mean...
The signalized intersection?
No.
It's the
50 yards below Dumont and is the entrance to the Home Depot and the ShopRite.
Understood. This intersection is going to have the most impact, obviously, because not all of the traffic, because some of the traffic's going to make a left to New Brunswick.
Right, that intersection right there.
The main access, main access driving to Home Depot and Shop.
Referring to A1, here's our site. A portion of our traffic's going to exit the site from New Brunswick Avenue to get to Route 22 and get out to 78. The remaining portion is all going to come to this stop sign. So this is where we have the most impact. Some of them are going to turn right, probably not some of them are going to go through, and some are going to turn left. So we're diminishing the impact as you get farther from this intersection. So if we're not changing the level of service here, it's less likely that we're going to change it here. Certainly at a signal, and we're going to change it. It's less and less likely. So the results would be...
Okay. All right, so in my last question/comment, we've all been in a variety of different communities throughout New Jersey, Randolph, Roxbury, so on and so forth, where this plan that you use as, I guess, your Bible, New Jersey's traffic impact and road numbers and stuff, that's basically what you use to base all your decisions on, correct?
It's for the projections?
For the
projections,
exactly, right. In your professional opinion, is that really working? Isn't that, I mean, with the traffic congestion that you run into the state?
It generally overestimates. We do our own research count sometimes after things are opening and at different driveway access points, the same type of thing that the ITE does. And pretty much consistently in New Jersey, it's lower. It's less than what the ITE says. So, and actually very close, but usually lower in New Jersey.
All right.
It is surprisingly good at forecasting.
Any other questions from the board? Are there any questions or comments from the public regarding this witness's testimony? Yes, come forward.
Come forward, young man.
And identify yourself. You've already been sworn.
Ken Churlaw once again, and sorry for the eye rolling or whatever, but
I'm used to it.
I want to know what we have to do as a community, if I could. For some reason, somebody decided that Lowe's and this gas company deserve the light versus the main intersections where most of the traffic is, do not have a light.
Mr. Sherlock?
Yes.
It's really not relevant to this particular application. I mean, this applicant or this board has no say over that at all.
Okay, I'm not normally here, so I was just curious what we as a community have to do, who we have to contact, or who we have to go through. Is it the county, or how do we get this mess changed?
It's a county road, and your path, sorry Frank, would be through the township committee to try to approach.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
And I know I'm taking time.
Yeah,
but
this board just has nothing to do with that.
Yes, I know.
And we're glad of it. Are there any other questions or comments from the public? Yep, come on, Thorne. You gotta identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Tammy Hill.
Terry's wife. You want to swear her in?
Yes. Can you raise your right hand? You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And your address?
529 North Main Street, Stortsville.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm allowed to actually talk because I am an employee, and it's kind of on behalf of, I'm a crossing guard.
I would think that you can ask a question on your own behalf, and just like board members have a personal and work experience.
Make a comment based on your experience.
And your experience as a crossing guard, I think, would be relevant.
All right. I have a question for you. When you did the traffic study, did you do the traffic study at the hours of 2:45 to 3:45 when the elementary school lets out?
No, we did 4 to 6 in the evening, which tends to be busier. The shopping is going to drive most of the traffic around here, and commuters.
I don't know if I have the right to ask, but I think that should be...
You have the right to ask anything, whether it's relevant or irrelevant. The chair will let you know.
Okay. I personally, as a crossing guard, I do think that needs to be readdressed because that is an extremely busy time, that a lot of traffic is coming into the school, going into Yvonne Way, coming out of the school, on Wyndham Farm, and also out of Yvonne Way, because people do tend to cut through Daniel Drive to Yvonne Way, and they go out that way, versus coming down Wyndham. They can go both ways, and a lot of the cars are turning left.
I get that. Here's the reason why we look at the hours that we do. 7 to 9 in the morning is going to be your commuting rush hour for people who live in an apartment complex and commuters.
And that's fine because that covers school.
On top at the same time. And schools tend to start at the same, they have more traffic in the morning than in the evening, because in the evening, schools have after-school programs and things like that, and it's more staggered in general.
Okay.
So the commuting on top of the school is captured in the morning. Then you have your school peak at 2:30, 3 o'clock, but you have no commuter traffic on the road. The retail traffic isn't as busy. Between 4 and 6, you get the retail, restaurant traffic getting busy, and the commuter traffic being busy. So those are the two peak times.
Okay.
And that's...
Okay, I mean, I just personally know from where I'm at, which is Wyndham Farm and Greenwich Street, there is a tremendous amount of traffic coming from down Greenwich Street to the center of town and going from from the center of town, North Main, to past Greenwich Street out to the light.
And
So,
you're right at the school. Right at the school, you are going to see that spot.
but even beyond that,
But-
there's an
but down
excessive amount
here-
of traffic.
What's influencing the traffic in this area is all this retail and all the residential coming home from work. That's
Okay,
having...
I mean, okay, that's just my personal opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public? Comment, question? I don't see anyone else. Where are we now? What else do we have?
We don't have anybody else. That's it.
All right.
Okay, so...
All right. Well, we might as well do. So does anyone in the public have any additional comments, not related to this specific witnesses, but...
They're not related to anything else that you've said. Anything else you want to tell the board before I charge them and they deliberate and vote? No. No. So unless you're dying to make a closing...
I'm not. My sense is everybody's clear on what we're talking about here.
So the relief that's being requested this evening as part of this application is, and correct me if you disagree, a C1 hardship variance to allow no sidewalk along Greenwich Street. And I say C1 hardship variance because they couldn't do the whole sidewalk because they got the grading problem. But it's a C1 based on their testimony that basically, it's basically almost a sidewalk to nowhere. And so it's not only a hardship due to the grading, but it's as a practical matter, it's a practical difficulty. A C2 variance to allow cutting the berm, but only if the walkway option is utilized, which is option 2. If the walkway option is not utilized, then this C2 variance evaporates, and strict conformance with the berm requirement must be met. And then lastly, preliminary site plan approval, not preliminary and final, and there's a huge difference. For preliminary site plan approval, the plans technically only have to be in tentative form. These plans are in a lot more than tentative form. But they are not applying for final site plan approval, because for final site plan, you need detailed plans. And these plans don't have the level of detail that will be required for final approval. For example, we don't have the details of the color, of the material.
More importantly, we don't have A3 completely engineered out.
Correct.
I mean,
Correct.
that's the
So
significance.
it's preliminary site plan only. So what is, the C2 variance, by the way, is the benefits versus detriments. So their argument is, if option 2 is the option that is selected, that's if the township doesn't give it the kibosh, then the benefits of having that walkway would outweigh the detriment of cutting the berm. That's their argument in a nutshell. Now, the standard for whether or not to grant preliminary site plan approval is very easy. Does the application comply with all the ordinance requirements? Well, in Beth's memo, her opinion is yes, it complies with everything, and that would accept no sidewalk on Greenwich Street, and if you go with option 2, you'd have to cut the berm. But what the case law says is, okay, so that's why you deal with those variances first. If they're granted, then the question is, does the application comply with the rest of the requirements? And your own planner in our memo says yes. So that's the case in a nutshell. Do you grant the C1 variance to allow them not to install a sidewalk along Greenwich Street? Do you grant the C2 variance to allow them to cut the berm only if option 2 is utilized? And based on those two, do you grant preliminary site plan approval? Subject to all the conditions that have been discussed tonight, and if you want, I'll go through all of them, but there are over 2 dozen, and I suggest that, you trust me by now with these resolutions, I'm going to pick them up, and then it's going to go out, and everyone's going to have a chance to review it, etc. So unless anyone has any questions...
We need a motion to grant the C1 variance to...
Yeah, I suggest having the deliberation first, and then have the motions whether to grant the C1, the C2, and the preliminary site plan.
Okay.
Decide who you want to start to deliberate, which side. You can pick, or you can ask for volunteers.
What, who wants
Who wants to go first?
The discussion is whether we want to grant the C1 variance, which would eliminate the sidewalk on Greenwich Street.
And the C2 variance,
And the C2.
if you go with the option...
Well, let's do one at a time,
Okay,
right?
you can do one at a time, or you can do them together. One at a time.
I have a question for that.
Yep.
How much time do we have to pursue option 1? So let's say we don't get an answer from the county, it takes a while.
You have as much time before they file for final site plan approval.
That was the question. So
Yep.
before they file, okay. So in other words, they can't, once that job's complete, you can't go back to them and say, do this now.
Correct.
Okay.
If it's helpful, we wouldn't expect to be back before the board looking for final site plan approval for at least 6 months. So there's some time there.
That's all the time.
Not when you're dealing with the county, but...
Well, maybe not, but that's a lot more than I just thought, okay.
Yeah, so, right, it's not a, oh, you didn't get it done next week.
Well, I thought we were trying to rush this month for the finance.
You just need preliminary for that.
So
You need
let's,
preliminary.
so give me your opinions in terms of the C1 variance, that is eliminating the sidewalk along Greenwich. Mark?
My opinion is any pedestrian away from Greenwich is a good thing, so...
He's in favor of it.
I'm in favor of it.
Anybody else? Doesn't sound like we, okay, so...
Everyone agrees with Mark on the C1 variance for the no sidewalk.
Okay.
So we'll apply it tonight, and normally not.
But I do have one question, though. Suppose the county says, I don't care that you all gave them that variance, they gotta put it in anyway?
Yeah, so they have to put it in, they have to put it in.
Okay, that's it.
This board cannot grant relief from a county requirement.
Right, okay, so can we do a motion now?
No, you do a motion at the end. I want you to deliberate on all the relief. And you have one motion at the end.
Okay.
It's not, you're remembering the BO, if you're acting as a BOA and you need 5 votes for a D, then you do it
I
separately.
think you have to do one at a time. Okay, the C2 variance, which is...
Allow cutting the berm only
Allow cutting the berm only if,
the walkway option number 2.
Yeah, the walkway, which basically requires the township to allow us to, allow them to construct that walkway. Opposed, against, what are your feelings on it? You're in favor? Favor. Anybody not like it?
The idea of the berm or the...
No, the idea of allowing the cutting of the berm to install that walkway.
You mean, personally, I don't like it. I think it's, again, tomorrow is a very special day for me. It marks the last time in 6 years that I no longer have to drive that disastrous Greenwich Elementary School.
Carpool.
My kids will be moving, not to this hill on the corner, but my kids will now be bused, and this is a big deal for me. Having said that, I personally think we've opened Pandora's box, and I think any solution we have creates a bigger problem. I think we should let sleeping dogs lie, keep the pedestrians away from Greenwich Street, away from cutting through anything, and leave it as is. That's my thinking. But how do they leave? It's not, we're not making anybody live here.
You're gonna have to be driven like he's doing, that's what he's saying.
That's the only place in town that people have to walk.
That's what he's saying, that they're gonna have to drive them like he drives his kids, that's what he's saying.
If it's not safe, it's not safe. My kids, they get the bike every now and again, and I'm the dad that, all right, when they leave, I wait a minute, and then I drive up to make sure they got there, right? And I'm very, once they get to Greenwich Street, I know they're in good hands. But they're elementary kids. If you're going to let your kindergartner walk to school from that, I mean, it's insane. It's not happening.
Well, so deliberate, so you're against cutting it too?
Oh, I've been against it from the minute to get-go, because I know what I see now. She's right. Over here about I can't get out of my driveway on those hours. So my neighbors will not let me out of my driveway. That's how many cars stack up coming out of that side of that Daniels Hall during those school times. And of course, to have any kids on Greenwich Street, it's absolutely nuts.
Okay, so, any other comments? What?
No, John was asking.
Yeah, so there's so far 3 people against cutting the berm, basically, they're against option 2 completely.
I figured you had to do these things separate.
This is the deliberation, there's no motion. Kathy.
So you don't have to provide sidewalks?
No, you don't, because, I mean, if you look at where...
Stop. The ordinance requires you to provide a sidewalk. They've presented a case saying it's a sidewalk to nowhere and it's dangerous, and that's the basis for the board that's already indicated in the deliberation that they're going to grant the C1 variance so they don't have to put a sidewalk out on Greenwood Street. We're off that. We're on to whether or not to grant the C2 variance to allow that berm to be cut only if walkway option 2 is utilized. Even though the board straw polled itself before, it's straw poll. In the straw poll before, everyone said yes except for Mark, who said no. Now, people have changed their mind because they've thought about it more. That's what the straw poll was for. So now, you have 3 deliberators saying no C2 variance to cut that berm. They don't want that option 2. That's what they're saying. So now it's your turn.
But, But to speak to Kathy, no, the township is not required to provide a sidewalk so the kids can get to school.
Correct.
Because where I live, you got South Main Street, and, you know, it's the same thing. No, they carpool.
They're too close for busing.
You almost have to ask yourself this question. If there's no sidewalk installed, are kids still gonna negotiate and walk to school? And then what are we creating by not supplying pedestrian access? That's the issue.
Well, that same issue holds for
All right, so, let's stick on this point.
No.
Let's stick on the point, the C2 variance, okay? Cutting the berm. You got any opinions over here? Yes,
Wait,
no?
Kathy, cutting the berm or not? So you're a yes, okay. So if this,
I would be yeah, I would still be for cutting the berm.
You're cutting the berm. Pam, you still cutting the berm? Joe, Paul?
I guess that's mixed.
okay, it's mixed, which way, is it yes or no?
Well, I'm seeing the arguments on both sides, and you've got to be fair to all. And I understand the neighbors who, and yes, you're right, they're going to cut through the field and go over. And so there'll be foot traffic there. But the kids that are currently walking to school are creating the same foot traffic just on other streets, whether it's South Main Street, whether it's Wyndham Farm Boulevard. So there's traffic in somebody's front yard or backyard regardless. You know, so if we're cutting through there, and in the sake of not having them cross, I'm just tore up. I'm not seeing that's that big of an issue, but I understand you all that live right there. You know, I do see that point.
And they're gonna be allowed to have
Actually, I'm
dogs,
just telling you
right?
the
Dogs.
No, I understand that. I truly understand that. It's, again, I'm challenged right here. I don't know that I'll make up my mind right up until the time that comes here to vote. I'm trying to
We'll make the
process
motion,
this.
however it is deliberation.
But is it good for the community?
Okay, Paul, is this a yes or a no?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I won't know until you all get ready to vote here.
Okay.
I'm struggling.
My other comment is, because of it, you have an attraction. The attraction is the school with a play area, with Thomas Stewart Park further up. That's why I think it's a little bit different than what you deal with on Beatty's Road, Kennedy Mill.
That's the difference.
Because you don't have an attraction for the kids to go there, to where here you have an attraction. The kids know that there's a playground at the school. They know that there's ball fields at the school. They know that Thomas Stewart Park is on that side of Greenwich Street. So they have an attraction. Regardless, I think they're still going to cut. When I was a kid, I cut through people's backyards all the time.
Well, there's a density issue. You've got a density of population.
That's a good size park across the street where the neighbors are, and I can tell you that'll be
All right.
a attraction.
Yeah, I understand. I think what we need to do is do a motion.
Can we hear from Bill and you first on the deliberation on the C1?
You need to hear from me?
Yeah, I need to hear from you. Bill,
Well,
C1, I'm okay with.
for the C2 for cutting the berm.
You know what's gonna happen, we're spending all this time, the parents are still gonna drive their kids. It's the kindergarten through what, 4th to 5th grade in that school? They're still gonna drive their kids.
and I agree with that, except and then they won't be a problem to the neighbors at all, but then you'll also have the kids going, maybe the older kids going down to the park on their own. So to my answer, yeah, I'm in favor of cutting the berm.
Okay. Bill, are you in favor or against cutting the berm? Just for straw poll? You're against. Okay, so someone's gonna have to make a motion, because right now, it's...
Why, are alternates votes counted the same as non-alternates?
He's doing a straw.
I'm doing a straw poll. There's gonna be a motion on it. I'm just trying to get a sense for where everyone is, that's all.
You get a sense for taking up the alternate votes.
Well, keep in mind, we're missing two.
We're missing two.
We're missing two, so,
So Bill's...
But there's now you have 10 people.
yeah, so there's only one person's vote that doesn't count.
Right. Who's the last?
Pam.
So Pam's vote doesn't count, so everyone but Pam. So right now, you have a tie with Bill, with Paul casting,
Paul, it's on you.
Paul has the deciding vote. So listen, is there any deliberation on the preliminary site plan? Does everyone agree that other than these two variances, it complies with everything?
Yeah.
So now go with your separate motions.
Okay. I need a motion to grant the C1 variance, which is to basically allow them to eliminate the sidewalk on Greenwich Street. Second, and Gary second. Roll call vote?
Paul Beam?
Yes.
Joseph Sotelo? Frank Marchetta? Bruce Williams?
Yes.
Kathy Cullen? Mark Scuderi?
Yes.
Gary Hill?
Yes.
Joseph Fama?
Yes.
Bill Kanye?
Okay.
Now, my suggestion is to make the motion to grant the C2 variance to allow cutting the berm because the MLUL provides if a motion doesn't get a majority vote, it's denied. If you make the motion to deny it and it doesn't get a majority vote, then you throw it into question. That's why I wanted to do the straw poll, to see where we were.
Okay. So,
So can someone make a motion to grant the C2 variance to allow cutting the berm only if walkway option number 2 is utilized?
I'll make the motion.
second? Joe? Roll call.
Paul Beam?
Yes.
Okay.
Joseph Sotelo?
Yes.
Frank Marchetta?
No.
Bruce Williams?
Yes.
Kathy Cullen?
Yes.
Mark Scuderi?
No.
Gary Hill?
Yes.
Joseph Fama?
No.
Bill Kanye?
Okay, that passes 5-4. And lastly, a motion to grant preliminary
I
site
need a
plan
motion
approval.
to grant preliminary site plan approval.
I'll make the motion.
Gary, second
Second.
is Frank. Roll call.
Paul Beam?
Yes.
Joseph Sotelo? Frank Marchetta? Bruce Williams?
Yes.
Kathy Cullen? Mark Scuderi?
Yes.
Gary Hill?
Yes.
Joseph Fama?
Yes.
Bill Kanye?
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. We appreciate
Just
all
so
your
everyone
time.
knows, you're not surprised, when I do the resolution, I'm going to have the 3 separate motions with the 3 separate votes, but only the 5 who voted yes on everything will be able to vote to adopt the resolution. So don't be insulted. And I'm going to give it to everyone, including Pam, and you can all comment on it. Now, everyone got packages.
Okay.
All right, the packages are for June 27th. That's when the second affordable housing project is going to be scheduled for a hearing. That is the Petrucci-Furman project. Development. And that, I believe, can someone just confirm that the 4th Wednesday of the month?
June 22nd?
No.
Thursday, July?
Thursday, June 27th.
So, I thought you said 2nd.
No.
I'm sorry, okay.
Thursday, June 27th. So
All right.
I have email versions of everything, which I've had since last week. I didn't want to freak anyone out, so tomorrow I'll send you out the email versions also.
Yeah, the Marcus exhibit.
Wait. Folks, thank you very much, first of all. And thank you for the public. Thanks for coming. And I need a motion to adjourn. Gary, second.
Gary, Frank.
Mark, all in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.
What's the mechanism?